So I've been watching loads of. He's called Kid Katza, I think. I think Mule, I sent you some of his stuff.
Yeah.
It's just these hyper chaotic TikToks and Instagram reels. But he just starts out by being like, "I'm getting in someone's boot while they're loading groceries," and then like it's just like utter chaos. It's like 90 seconds of like the Eric Andre show style, like complete chaos. And if you scroll through it, it's just him going like, "I'm sneaking into a concert. What is it? I'm trying to get fired from Uber as fast as possible," like this, and it's just like it's fantastic. And I saw an action that I felt I felt like I was watching a Kid Katza video. But I saw the video of it, which was someone bringing a life-size cutout of Elon Musk doing the Hitler salute into the flagship store
Great.
of Tesla in London. You saw this too, right?
I saw a photo of it. I didn't realize what that was from, but it reminds me of back when Eric Andre, like, when Trump was first popping up and he was going
Yeah.
to his rallies and doing
That's where the "Let
like
Me In"
gnarly
gift
yeah,
comes from.
exactly.
Yeah,
I remember
right.
he had a stall that he was selling like these fake "Make America Great Again" hats from, but like the embroidery all said just like different stupid shit, but people were just coming up and buying them and stuff. And it was just like, like all kinds of like real gnarly offensive stuff or whatever. Like there was like there was, and like him being like a black man, like selling people these hats that were like "Make America Racist Again" and shit.
There was this one,
and him just being like, "This is the one you want, right? Yeah."
in the video that So's talking about, the Elon Musk one, there's this one worker who like obviously like sees what's going on in the showroom, and you could just hear him in the background like talking like very briefly. I don't know how much they go into it because I didn't watch the full video, but saying stuff like, yeah, no, it's definitely a Hitler salute. Yeah, it's really weird as well because all of our sales seem to have like dipped pretty slightly. I'm not really sure. Like I think it might be related, and it's like, come on, man, like.
It's like a mic drop, but like a stock drop, just like immediately plummeting the value of your company.
Yeah, like I guess you'd have to be like in a certain amount of denial if you're like, I don't know, maybe you went to work for the Tesla showroom, but like they give you like a bit of a dress down on like Elon Musk, and they're like, yeah, so this is our CEO. Anyway, moving on. Like, they don't really like tell you that much about him, and you don't know that much, and you're not an Elon Musk weirdo, but like, you work there. And you're like, you see this stuff and you're like, oh, that's my CEO. And then you do a bit more research on him and you're like, oh, he's really bad. And you're like, oh, I guess I'll just keep working here for like a bit. I don't know.
Yeah, like working at the like Harry Potter studio tour and like refreshing your feed to see like new shit where J.K. Rowling's like, trans children should be fed into a meat grinder. And you're like, oh God, I hope no one's seeing this tweet. Who is coming through right now with their children? Like, but no, I love seeing how much Teslas have been being vandalized. On the bonus episode we recorded this week, talking about Sing Kill the Boer as much as you want, which actually you'll talk about later in the news. We were talking about someone put like "Elon must die" on a ton of Teslas in a dealership. But I saw, it's funny because like we're always talking about how the propaganda of the deed gets more people to do stuff than any other kind of propaganda. Like seeing other people do it just gives you permission. But there's a picture going around at the moment that someone's spray painted like "liar," "cheater" like all over. Like it's obviously like a messy divorce all over a Tesla Cybertruck. Like, I can imagine this woman who's just like, yeah, I mean, everyone else is vandalizing Cybertrucks. I'm not going to get in that much trouble.
We're going to find out that is the latest mother of one of Elon's secret children.
Oh my God.
What, number 12 now?
That thing as well.
Yeah.
No, have you seen the latest developments in this? Like it's turning, he's turned around and is like harassing her horribly publicly. Like it's an actual nightmare. He's such a scumbag.
No, anyway, he's horrific.
Most of the episode will be about how much of a scumbag Elon Musk is. So let's have some more positive vibes by starting, like we usually do, Welcome to Red Planet, with what was the most base thing you did in the last month? I think it's been since the live show. Tim.
I actually can't talk about it just yet, but maybe we'll be in an update soon. It's relating to some developing events. yeah, there's some stuff going on. There's some organizing taking place. There's some pushing back in certain places. We'll see. We'll see. It's early days yet, but there's already been some interesting connections to be made. Mule, what have you got going on?
Thanks, Tim. I, for one, look forward to hearing what Tim's got to talk about. Great OPSEC there, mate. I have been doing, the GMTU stuff, GMTU chair stuff. It's been actually quite focused on recently conflict resolution, and it's really sort of made me realize how much I think that actually conflict resolution needs its own officer position maybe within our organization. That's certainly something that I'm thinking about. We have had, obviously I won't go into the details of the conflict because it's private and confidential. That's also key, something to be aware of. Like, if you are going to engage in any kind of conflict resolution, even if you're just doing it by the seat of your pants and you're thinking like, okay, I'm in a self-selecting single issue little organization, like maybe you're in a squat, or maybe you're in squat's not really a single issue, but you know what I mean. Maybe you're in a squat or something. Maybe you're in a small org that doesn't really have like a solid structure or a constitution or something, and you think, damn, I got these two individuals and they really hate each other. We got to try and figure it out. It's a lot of work. Ideally, what we would be doing, I think the conclusion that I've come to when it comes to this stuff is that if you have an organization and you have sort of leaders in that organization, say for example, if you've got a committee and you've got a bunch of committee officers that have been elected, you want to be coaching them all the time. And I think that's key, because a lot of the times conflict mediation, and I've had this advice, this isn't just me talking nonsense, this is me having spoken to a very, very incredible woman, Jill from Rhizome. Rhizome is an organization that we're hopefully going to get on the show in the future. I have asked her and she said, oh, not sure, because obviously, like, I think it's just because she's like a bit old and is like a bit scared about coming on like a podcast. When I say a bit old, I don't mean like 50. I think she's like literally 70. So like it might be like a bit like
Rhizome is a great name as well. Great name.
Yeah. Rhizome, like the roots or something. The sort of
crystally... So like
like rhizomatic thought with Deleuze and Guattari.
That's
exactly.
But so basically, she said that conflict mediation is a very American concept, and it's not very understood or enjoyed in the UK, mostly because the UK, the British, just have like this awful way of being conflict avoidant, which is like, pretend it doesn't happen, everything's fine, but then as things go on and on.
We're a rainy, cold, overcast country by default, and we're just so used to like shutting the door and like just never seeing someone again, just being like, okay, actually I'm just gonna completely give up on this relationship and just like it's fine to burn bridges. Whereas like they're all running around in under sunny skies, they're like, oh fuck, I'm gonna run into someone, I better resolve my conflict. Also because they might have a gun.
real it's pretty good, because it's like in the UK what tends to happen is people tend to see conflict mediation as like a court. So it's which is just so British. It's so embarrassing. It's like, okay,
this is monarchy thinking.
Yeah, this is the place where I'm going to get to say that I'm the one that's in the right and everyone's going to prove me wrong. Whereas actually what it is it's quite a painful process. I would like absolutely, if you are going to engage in this thing, it can be a painful process for the people involved, and it might be very much worth doing a lot of preparation before you try and get two people in one room together who don't like being in a room together. I know that sounds like baby basic stuff, but like you might hear the idea of a mediation and be like, okay, yeah, you just get two people in a room together and sort it out. It's like, no, you don't understand. Like
you just go into the Thunderdome.
That's what it'll be. It'll be the Thunderdome. They'll just fight, and it's just not good.
But you want two comrades to enter and two comrades to leave.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the crucial part. Like,
this is
that they both are able to leave, physically, and that they are still comrades.
Correct. So yeah, it's super important to remember that, like, in order for a conflict to be resolved, two people have to like agree in some regard. So they have to at least agree that like the things that happened that one person thinks is just about basically the same in the same way that the other person thinks that they happen. Because if you like disagree on something as fundamentally as how things happened, it's going to be very difficult to try and resolve any conflict between two people, because one person is going to be like, well, you're lying, and the other person is going to be like, well, no, I'm right, you're lying. It's just a recipe for disaster. So that's something I've learned. It's also something that is like, you know, there's a degree of debate, I think, that has to be had, and maybe we'll hopefully go into this when we get Jill on the show, if she wants to come on the show. But essentially, the way that I think of it is sort of like understanding the necessity to have an organization like GMTU, and also knowing that there's a necessity to have conflict resolution, is that where do you draw the line, right? We have to sort of think and decide and debate at what point do we stop you know, a conflict resolution process from continuing any further because we think A, that one of the persons is getting harmed too much, or two, one of the other persons being too obstinate and is not, you know, acting in good faith, and therefore
I think this is my conflict mediation hot take. Chinning should be on the table. I think that when you enter into a conflict mediation, if you need to like, it's for the end of the process, but the mediator says, look, if when we've agreed about what has happened here, we all agree that one of you was a scumbag, getting chinned.
Get a chin.
Officially by the org.
I feel like that's, I mean, it's one of those
things help. We can all agree on it. It would help.
And if someone goes like, yep, I'll take it. I'll do that, you know? Like,
it's also an incentive to like take part in the mediation, because you might be like, yeah, I get that. I'm going to win, and then I'm going to get to chin them. And then they're in the room, and then you can talk it out. And at the end, you'll be like, I don't even want to chin. That's my comrade, you know?
Yeah. So conversely, we should also put the socialist fraternal kiss on the table as well.
That's, you know, real. Yeah. That's big time real, but only the fraternal kiss. No heterosexual kissing allowed. No. I think that's really important. No. I mean, writing The Mad and the Mentally Ill and looking loads about like my theory of madness and specifically orienting it towards organizing at the same time that I'm getting involved in organizing, it's like I'm realizing more and more how much it has to be a part of the conversation about conflict mediation, because often like your comrades are just really fucking mentally ill and acting in absolutely crazy ways that like are hurting or even harming people, and just you need to be able to like, there has to be like people talk loads about there needing to be like better. They talked about this on the ZAD as well, like, and they talk about this in every like squat and commune and everything, just services, community services for mentally ill people. But at the same time, I think mental illness needs to be introduced as a massive thing into conflict mediation, just like acknowledging that people sometimes are unwell.
Yeah, I think we also need to reclaim you know, counseling, because it really does feel like there's a certain point where, you know, I've had lots of counseling in my life. Some of it's been good, some of it's been shit. But the best counseling has been where I've just been able to talk at someone until I go, maybe I'm being a bit of a dickhead. Right? When you get all of it out, and you're like, and then I can't believe they did this and they said that, so I just told them to fuck off, and then I like threw my drink at the wall, and then you sit there and you go, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. You know, like, and so I think that like privatizing being that person who just like listens to someone, it's something that has to be fully reclaimed, because you can just be that person. Like you don't need any special training. You just need to know how to listen and not interrupt, and eventually go, well, okay, how do you feel now? And then they'll be like, oh, a bit better. Cheers. You know, and there's like a certain degree that we can like reclaim that. I'm not saying that we should like fully start to do psychological analysis of all of our comrades and attempt to learn the, you know, the ins and outs of being a psychiatrist, but I think there's a certain amount of that we can reclaim. Anyway,
I've gone on for long enough. If every comrade had a better education of madness and mental illness, they would be bringing not only a better understanding of everyone else, but of themselves, hopefully, so that if you then had people kind of psychoanalyzing each other, like they would be going, hey, like, you're quite anxious, right? And the person they're talking to would be like, yeah, I am quite anxious. I've realized this about myself. And I think often I assume the worst case scenario when things are, you know, like I'm maybe I snapped at you last week like that because I was worried that it was gonna go wrong because I hadn't had this piece of information or whatever. Like, I just think it leads to better. I don't know. Yeah, I just think it helps.
Yep. Spot on. Soph, what's the most base thing you did this week?
Well, I'm not copying Tim here, but I can't talk about the most base thing I've been up to. And it's going to develop and there's going to be more of it. And it's cool. And I might talk about it, but not yet. But we'll see. But Mule knows what it is, but we'll see. So I'll tell you about the other stuff. I went to a protest in Peckham, which was basically about there are these like developments around the Old Kent Road, not the Old Kent Road tube extension, which I've been talking about, the like really useless anarchist flying that's been going against the tube extension, and people have been like they interview people in the Southwark News and we're like, what do you think of this? And universally everyone was like, I don't get it. I want the tube. I want more trains.
Tube.
This protest that I went to was about basically there have been 3 big developments by the same company, Barclay, and they have offered 30% affordable housing on 2 of them. And then they've offered 12.5% affordable housing on the 3rd one. And I wanted to go along because like this is obviously insulting and disgusting, but I had a lot of concerns about this because we're talking, I think it's a move. I think they've deliberately made it so one of their developments has lower rate of affordable housing, which isn't affordable anyway.
Yeah. And
it's already in the minority. It's less than a third. And then I think they'll respond to protests if they have to by going, okay, sure. We'll make 30% of that one affordable housing as well. And then they're all 30% affordable housing. And then like the protest like dies away. Like you see how like it works, this kind of, pardon me, this kind of like limited hangout, this deliberate like granting the smallest crumbs, like the ceasefire in Gaza, right? Like the genocide has not stopped. The protests have gone away. Like it works, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I'm suspicious of. Went to this protest. It was pretty small numbers, but the person coordinating it was like really on the ball, and like we just seized the road. Like we just went into the road and stopped traffic, even though there weren't very big numbers. I was really skeptical, but like they pulled it off. That was cool. I have been doing some odd job editing for workers in Palestine, just some stuff for their social media feed, but it's just a small thing. Chopping up some footage, and as ever, I've been going to woke school. So we had, we had safer sex, bloodborne viruses, and consent. I think I was already telling you about this one that like before we started recording the other day, I was saying it's already woke school, and I'm like, I want to put up my hand for every question and just be like, teacher, I know the answer. This one's like woke sex school. I'm like, I'm vibrating in my seat. We had the drugs one. We had an abolition 101 session. That was fantastic. Unfortunately, I missed the week on sex work, but I have experience, so should be fine. There are also catch-up sessions. But yeah, we had an abolition 101 one. That was really interesting because like we did a bunch of scenario work, and people just started forming this like joke habit of like at the end of all our suggestions of what to do in each scenario, people were like, and also don't call the police. Just like as like the easy 1-pointer answer. But it was pretty interesting. Yeah, like we had it like, okay, so we had the 5 Ds of bystander intervention, which is basically like different ways that you can intervene, and they're mostly focused around talking to the victim of something that is going on that you observe, because only one of them is direct, which is directly confront the aggressor, right? And yeah, I was just talking about like the different things that we could do. Like in one example, you see like a parent yelling at a child at the school gates, like while you're dropping off your kid, and you know, so that was one to use like delegate, right? Speak to the teacher who already has a pre-existing relationship and also like ability to do safeguarding stuff, but also like maybe you want to do a different option because that still might like bring in the carceral state, like childcare services could get involved or whatever. Like it depends, you know, how you assess things and also how well you know the situation. But there was also a really interesting one, which was just like you're at the pub and you and a friend hear shouting you outside, and there's 2 guys, and one of them seems to be like drunk and raging and hits the other guy, and then his friends drag him off of the other guy. What do you do? And it was a really interesting discussion because it was like several people were like, well, we don't know the situation. sometimes someone has like started something and then gotten punched, and it's not actually the person who did the punching who was like the original aggressor and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, it was super interesting. I'm really enjoying woke school, and we want to know what base things you've all been doing. So you can message us on social media, or you can send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode of the show in this segment here. We've had people before who've been doing really, really cool stuff, and we'd love to hear from you. So first, now though, we want to hear from Mule about the Rosebank oil field.
So this is a really interesting story. The Rosebank oil field development has been scrapped after a court rules it is unlawful. So Stop Cambo, a campaign running to stop all new gas and oil licenses to be granted by the UK government, sort of similar to Just Stop Oil, has been successful in its campaign to block the license to develop extraction facilities on the Rosebank oil field. The oil and gas field, 80 miles west of the Shetland Islands, is completely untapped as of yet and has been surveyed and analysed by its owner, Norwegian energy giant Equinor, obviously mostly focusing on the fact that they can make mad bank off it. Equinor, unsurprisingly, is a name change from the previous moniker of the company, which was Statoil, as the company attempts to greenwash its image, claiming investments in new energy despite desperately begging for the Rosebank development licence from the UK government. They also have a thing on their website that says 150 million people benefit from our energy. And that's just not a lot, really, is it? It's just not... That's just not a lot of people. Like 150 million people, like that might be like, I don't know, just like the population of Britain and maybe France. I don't know. It's just like such a bizarre thing to boast. Anyway, the development stopped thanks to the painstaking efforts made by the Stop Rosebank campaign. Would have endangered hundreds of the native species of animals and plants in the North Atlantic, including minke whales, humpback whales, rissos, dolphins, and many more. The ruling given by the court states that the public interest in authorities acting lawfully and the private interest of members of the public in climate change outweigh the private interest of the developers. The campaign was supported by almost 100,000 signatures from people all over the UK, with organisations like Greenpeace and Uplift delivering the court challenges with support from their membership. The legal challenge was focused on the fact that the project was simply outside of the UK's own targets for reducing carbon emissions, preventing climate change. The government will have an oil and gas consultation in the spring, which could mean that these targets are walked back or even scrapped, but the ruling shows a powerful campaign plus structured organisations can make all the difference. An interesting thing that I found when I was researching this story was that the owner of Equinor, which is a guy called Anders something, I can't remember his second name, he is sort of like not being that, I guess, outspoken about his wealth. When you do the Google search, so-and-so net worth, couldn't find what his net worth was at all. But what I did find out is that his salary, so he has two salaries, which is unsurprising. The first salary is his base salary, which is £950,000. And the fixed salary on top of that, the fixed salary, I don't know why it's fixed salary. I guess that's just like, well, if the 950 grand goes to pot, he's got this on top of it. The fixed salary is £150,000. So he's basically earning £1 million a year. So, we could sort of just get like a pretty accurate guess of what his net worth is just based off that information. But I found it interesting because we are in an age where I think probably a lot of people are Googling CEOs and how much they earn. And I wonder if this is something that's rapidly changing. Elon Musk desperately trying to scrub all records of like, oh, well, shit, they know I've got 448 billion or whatever it is, 998 billion or something. Oh, I better try and at least hide how much equity I've got in housing or something, like desperately trying to scrub all mention of it on the internet. But that's that. Quite an interesting win there from the people at Stop Rosebank and Stop Cambo. Soph, why don't you tell us about another incredible sort of selection of actions of Palestine action?
Yeah, absolutely. I met some people from Stop Rosebank, by the way, when I was doing a panel for TWT after I did The World Is Not Ending. I was invited to chair a panel, and it was quite frustrating because everyone was speaking like as their orgs, and I was like, guys, can we acknowledge there's going to be a revolution? And they were going, we need to create a people's house in parliament to improve democracy so that we can do more parliament democracy. And I was like, can we acknowledge there is going to be probably a quite violent revolution, and just sit with that and acknowledge it, please, because it's obvious. And like, I'd spoken to all of them before the panel and they all agreed about that and no one would say it. Anyway, great win. Glad to hear it. Palestine Action continues actions against Elbit in the UK as well as Teledyne, as Trump announces plans to step genocide in Gaza into a new phase. So this month saw protests around the UK against Elbit, Israel's biggest weapons manufacturer, from Palestine Action, mostly focused around their Leicester factory, which has been the focus of like a lot of actions. This week saw an image circulated on social media that had like way more people than have been involved in Palestine actions, even against the Leicester factory so far, at the gates. The heavy police presence protecting the genocide machine. Yay! The Palestine Action put on Instagram a statement saying, Palestine Action has repeatedly shut down Elbit's drone factory in Leicester, UAV tactical systems, over the past few years. Actionists have blockaded their gates, occupied the roof, drove HGV into the building, dismantled the premises, and blocked its water and sewage pipes, which is awesome. And talked for a while about the basically the post talked for a while about the landlord and like how they've put pressure on them as well. And then it went on to say Leicester's time is near, and then encouraging people to apply to direct action training. There is like every sign that things are about to tip for the Leicester factory, and that it is weakening, is my point. But there was more besides this. So Bristol Palestine Action. Sorry, I'll start again. But there is more besides this. Bristol Palestine Alliance held a demo outside HMP Eastwood Park, where political prisoner Leona Cameo is being held. On their Instagram, Palestine Action said, Leona Cameo is one of the hashtag Filton18. She was arrested inside the Filton weapons hub of Israel's biggest arms firm and stands accused with 17 others of causing millions of pounds in damages. The support for Palestine Action's prisoners is across the country and global. We are all Palestine Action. Lastly, actionists also shut down Teledyne's factory in Shipley. The Palestine Action Instagram said, whilst Teledyne's Shipley factory need masses of technology to produce their weaponry, we only need dedication to shut them down. Elsewhere, over 15 actions were taken across Europe against Allianz, the insurers of Israeli weapons firm, Elbit Systems. So good time to get out of Allianz, Neil. Anyway, all of this unfortunately comes at the same time that Trump has announced his plan to turn Gaza into a beach resort. It's really horrifying. Netanyahu is over the moon, obviously. The Guardian reports the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed the idea during his recent White House visit, but foreign leaders have largely rejected it. You two both presumably saw this. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
I wanted to make sure that we definitely included here the massive news on Friday that the landlord of the Leicester factory, who I think is called London Metric or something like that, have officially like sold the property, so the land that the factory's on.
Yes, it is London Metric.
Yeah. So that's due to pressure from Palestine Action. The interesting thing about this is that they weren't able to sell it on at a reasonable price because obviously the repeated actions against Elbit Systems factory on that land means that, of course, any potential buyer knows what they're taking on. Is just it's an accident waiting to happen. So it will be interesting to see who's bought it. I'm not sure who's actually bought the land. It will be. I wonder like what the sort of strat would be. Generally speaking, if you think about what landlords do, landlords buy, if they can, cheap properties, do them up, sell them on, or charge higher rents. Now, it's questionable as to whether this landlord will renew the contract or the lease for Elbit Systems. If that's the case, great. Fuck them off. They're gone.
That's a win. That's it. Shut down.
Or I guess they could raise the rent, which is again actually, that's is just
still direct action working. You make it as unprofitable as possible.
That's exactly it, and that's what we've seen time and time again. That like particularly against Elbit is that when it hits the bottom line, that's it. And like with other kind of direct actions as well, it's like as soon as you make it more profitable, less profitable for them to operate, to the point where it's like, you know, it tips the balance over, where they're like, oh, okay, we're throwing too much money into this thing, we need to get out, you know. And that's like, you know, it's like that's one of the things that I guess like capital in general leverages against workers all the time. And it's like,
Yeah.
this is an interesting kind of like tipping it back towards them, being like, okay, cool, well,
Yeah.
you know, like we can also affect your fucking bottom line, you know.
Yeah, we were talking in one of the interviews that I'm doing for like how trans Americans are preparing and like organizing at the moment. I recorded one of the interviews this week, and I was talking with Maggie, the guest, about how about the military concept of the OODA loop, right? Observe, orient, decide, act. How this is like the loop of steps that every party takes at all times, just in acting, right? You have to observe your surroundings, orient yourself related to them, decide what to do in that act. And in a military conflict, you want to disrupt as many of those steps as possible in your enemy. And like, it's always worth remembering with all businesses that acting must include profiting in order for their loop to start over again. They won't do the loop again if it made them a loss. They would go, oh, fuck this off. Like, I'm not doing this at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like, as soon as it's not profitable, it's over.
Yeah, they're observing them, seeing what's happening, orienting themselves, being like, okay, this is how it's affecting us, and then being like, okay, well, we're just gonna decide not to act here, or we're gonna decide to.
And it's interesting with the landlord as well, because like, it's not like with individual tenants or like households, domestic renters, like business renters, like you trying to get like black mold removed from your bathroom and it taking months is not going to be the situation for this kind of like, for a big business landlord, and for like Elbit's, for like Israel's biggest weapons contractors landlord. Like they will be like, you need to come fix this right now, and the landlord will be liable to come and fix the shit that protesters have broken. And so like then the landlord like will be like, I want to get rid of this as soon as possible.
Yeah. Like this is the trouble tenant, too much hassle. It's, you know, it'll be affecting their insurance and everything like that. Probably get through alliance. Which actually I looked it up after we talked about it the other week, and that company has some dodgy, like they go all the way back to like Nazi Germany, like
That's
insuring them and stuff. It's wild.
Yeah.
So they're like, it's wild to see one company that has profited so much from, you know, like multiple genocides across the years. So
I feel like we should do a whole Red Planet episode about how insurance won't exist after capitalism's gone. No one will have to worry about what happens to your house if it burns down, because you just get another house.
Just build a new house with your comrades.
New house, all good.
New
Everyone
house right
comes
away.
Together. Exactly.
Oh, great. God. I was hoping I wanted a new house. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Even
insurance
like,
fraud will still exist under communism, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But insurance won't.
Yeah, totally. Like it's the things that you need insurance for generally are things that, you know, like that socialist or communist systems account for anyway, right? You know, it's like, it's only because this is a flaw in capitalism that requires a market-based solution, you know. So yeah.
Yep. Well, anyway, that is enough on Palestine action for this week. But how about some other people who took direct action against some fascists? Just remember, everyone, Zionists are fascists just as much as the next group here are fascists. Tim, why don't you tell us about direct action against some fascists?
Yeah. So this is a week or so ago over in Cincinnati. You might have seen footage. A group of neo-Nazis showed up on an overpass near Evendale and Lincoln Heights, literally like waving swastika flags, holding banners saying like America is for white men. They were armed with rifles, wearing the classic skull mask, immediately pissing off the local community. It's like a lot of them, you know, like, so they came in a U-Haul truck and they left in a U-Haul truck, which, you know, kind of implies that they are not from the area. And yeah, a lot of locals were saying like, this is funny that they chose this particular neighborhood. Like they're not in like, you know, like the liberal, like white suburbs here. Like they came to, and they did it to be provocative. They came to an area where there are, you know, like where there is a predominantly black community. So residents, including a 16-year-old named Ethan Ely, confronted the group. So despite police efforts to protect the peace of the Nazis, people broke through the barricades, snatched a swastika flag, and burned it while cheering and spitting on it. And the confrontation ended with the neo-Nazis fleeing in a U-Haul. There was actually another great video. I couldn't find the link to it again. It was going around Twitter and it kind of shows how the neo-Nazis work with the police, because so there's this other video of a guy driving through in his truck, and he's playing what is he playing? He is playing Fight the Power by Public Enemy, and he's like dancing in his car, and he's just this black dude. He rolls up, and these dudes, like the Nazis who are filming this, like this was from one of their point of view cams, they're yelling the N-word at him. They're like, saying all this shit like that. And they come right up to his window, and he just pulls out this handgun, and he's like dancing with his handgun. And they immediately and this is, you can see in this video, there's a guy on the other side with a rifle, like an actual, a rifle. And they both start screaming, he's got a gun. He pulled out a gun. Police, police, he's got a gun. And it's just man, you guys are such cowards. And this guy is obviously so unfazed. And they're screaming the N-word at him right in his face and all this kind of stuff. And he just doesn't give a fuck, and he is just kind of doing this. But it's that's the area he came to. Yeah.
It's super high stakes for them because they're trying to do propaganda of the deed.
Yeah.
But the deed for them is terrorizing marginalized communities, people of color. And when those communities just go actually, I've got a gun, so fuck off, and then they have to just get in their U-Haul and drive away, it does the exact opposite of what they want, which is other fascists will see this and be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. That looks scary.
That's embarrassing. They got their flag stolen and set on fire, in front of them. Yeah. So the Cincinnati NAACP released a statement saying, recently in the area, there was a group of individuals waving a symbolism of hate. We are aware of the presence, and based on the location they chose to display their message of hate, we question their residency in the city of Cincinnati. The statement reads, the organization added that the country's current administration may have in part motivated these demonstrators. They said, it is well known that people receive messages and actions in different manners. The current executive orders and actions have angered many and emboldened others. Obviously, Trump signed an order in January calling for the elimination of government diversity programs, which included ending all federal offices and jobs related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, the DEI. And this is obviously attack on not just Americans of color, but also women, queer people, everything like that. So it's very easy to see why these people are feeling emboldened by these acts. I saw even when they announced all that shit, I saw there was a video of a White House press correspondent, and she was wearing a t-shirt that said "Make America Blonde Again." It's these people just have no shame about this stuff at the moment. So yeah, Trump also signed, of course, multiple orders around limiting immigration on the day that he got inaugurated. So he has the whole plan about cracking down on illegal immigration and mass deportations of undocumented people and stuff. So a lot to these Nazi freaks, they're this is, this is our guy, and he's doing the plan. And, so that's, they're saying, okay, we're going to start deporting all these people. And then they're waving the flag saying America is for white men. It's
look, I'm going to get way more into this in the discussion, but I said this in my video, What Now, about what do we do now Trump is back. And it's just he has built spectacular fascism, right? It's just it's the spectacle. It's all spectacle. Yeah. And there isn't this mass populist base supporting him. And so he can be in there and have the power to say yeah, no more DEI. And these guys read it as the moment has come. We can the storm is here. We can take the streets and we'll start hanging people. And it's just no, citizens aren't going to join in with you. They're going to get their guns out and make you leave.
It's like
right away.
Kekistan neckbeard losers sat there being
Mm.
like, "Oh, it's time to go outside finally." It's just that, right?
That's why they were
Yeah.
bellied up so they didn't get a sunburn.
Yeah. So yeah, a little update is we think that all of the Nazis from this demonstration have actually been identified publicly now, which is
Yeah,
great.
it might not be
because
all. I think it's definitely a
yeah.
lot of them.
Well, yeah, like I did see some photos going around. It was like, like the Brady Bunch intro with all the heads, and it was just like these people,
One of the captions on one of the posts that someone did of it, I think it's on Instagram or something, it said, "We were supposed to send one of them to the afterlife, but this will do for now." Like just like a picture of them like burning the flag and stuff. It's just great. Like this is the thing. It's like, that's I guess like the romanticizing of the revolution, right? You have to make the revolution irresistible. That's we are nature defending itself. Making the revolution irresistible is like, yeah, like you really want to be making Instagram posts boasting about how many fucking Nazis you've seen off. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is. Like
yeah. We've had a bit of dramas over the weekend here with our local Christo fascists and stuff like that. So it has been great also seeing a lot of local people that I know that in the past haven't really been very political. And I'm talking about like people like like other tattoo artists or like other Maori artists and like community figures and stuff, like making straight up posts being like, this shit is unacceptable, and like if they keep pushing, we will push back. And I think it's like there is this thing where it's like, there was like the years of like Black Lives Matter, and then in other ways, like there was also like the Me Too movement, where that was like the kind of like liberal kind of energy pushing at the conservatives, and then I think this wave of like the current administration and stuff is pushing back harder than they ever have before. And I think that is going to be met with like more of a mainstream kind of like liberal left kind of pushback against that I think is going to be probably, I would say, more bigger and perhaps even more violent than we have seen in the past.
But
which
it's like Hegel's view of history is like, opposites emerge, like a pendulum that's doing the opposite of what it usually does and swinging further and further out. Like the more one side pushes this way, the more radicalized this side gets. Like you said, liberal left, but it's like, where are the liberals? Like increasingly, it's just unfashionable to be a liberal. Like liberal is a dirty word for people, and for good reason. Everyone wants to be a fucking communist. Like,
well, yeah, and I think like, yeah, a lot of the people that were doing the liberal infographic thing a few years back have been radicalized since then, have been pushed further, and are now considering themselves communists or anarchists or things further left. So they
I have like, we're all on a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of the people that were influences in that area have then become further left, but also the ones that were kind of grifters a lot of them have been kind of pushed out. Obviously new ones will emerge or whatever, but I think that there is definitely more of an understanding of class consciousness these days, down
but
the
I
track.
think if you have a dialectical view of history, which like I'm not sure I totally subscribe to, but like I think it is a very good model. Like two opposites can only resolve by annihilating each other and then forming some kind of synthesis, and the more powerful one dominates the synthesis, right? And I just think that I was at the climbing wall the other day and I was thinking to myself about what the last few years have felt like, and it just felt like someone's like mom came in and told these like the dad and the boys, like, you gotta lift the seat up, and if you get splashes everywhere, you just gotta wipe the seat. And then like and everyone in the room was like, yeah, that's reasonable. That is completely reasonable. And then there's been this like further and further kicking off and like tutting and rolling of eyes from like the men who've been told that they have to wipe their ass properly or whatever. And like it will just reach a point where they like really kick off and everyone else in the room is just like, no, bro, like, no, absolutely not. Like I think that in like despair and in like seeing like institutional capture by fascists, people forget that the hegemony is still actually people caring for each other, and most people still just massively, the massive majority of people still just support like marginalized groups, like just progress and like caring for one another. And the more fascism comes out, the more people wake up to material conditions as well, and then go like, oh shit, no, that wasn't enough. We actually need communism as well.
Yeah. Oh well. So moving on, Mule, what's what's going on? What's Musk been up to? We're going to talk more about Musk and stuff later, but what's been going on here?
Well, Sophie might stop this story because I definitely checked to see that there were no mentions of this in any of the Elon Musk stories that we already have going. So stop me if it is actually in there at some point. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Musk's spat with Malema. Yeah, I'm getting the nod from Sophie. It's all good. Great. So,
we also talked about this more on our bonus episode.
Yeah.
So if you're not already subscribed to the Patreon, check out the Patreon. We had a great time talking about that.
So I titled the story "Idiot Musk Streisand Affects EFF into Orbit." So your boy Donkus Jonkus Mule is a mad fan of the economic freedom fighters. They are basically like one of the sort of biggest sort of communist parties in Africa. If we're talking about like an actual vanguard party, like political party, like they're huge. It's pretty impressive when you see the crowds that they pull and their membership and all this stuff. So as soon as I saw that Apartheid Clyde, aka Elon Musk, he just could not help himself recently to go back to his roots of racism when he recently used his position in Trump's government to highlight the, quote, plight of white South Africans, end quote, in a spat against, in the EFF, basically, the Economic Freedom Fighters, and Julius Malema. The plight that he's referring to, if you don't know about this, it's something that racists love to roll around as soon as they get sort of debated into a corner, I guess, about, how racism is wrong. They'll always go, but what about the white South Africans in South Africa? They're all getting the land taken off them. Right. So that's what it is. So basically, obviously, the idea is that it's basically it's the result of decades of apartheid against indigenous black South Africans. That's the heart of the issue, and he is essentially saying that white South Africans are having their farming land stolen, but it's obvious to most people who know about colonialism that the land was stolen in the first place, and actually Elon Musk's dad was one of these guys. He stole some African land to extract emeralds and likely cause the suffering and deaths of hundreds of indigenous South Africans over the decades that he was able to do this. And then the expropriation bill, which is known by hysterical Western capitalist media and by proxy Musk as the land seizure law, basically gives the state the ability to just purchase the land at the market rate, land that it deems to be public land from private owners, those of which are, most likely to be targeted being historically white settlers, holding on to the land because of their stubbornness to hold on to any sort of colonial legacy that they have in the region. So Musk has been retweeting some of Julius Malema, the EFF's chairman's best bits. For example, when he led a crowd chanting, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer," Boer farmers essentially translating to white settler colonizer plantation owners. So, while if you're trying to, I guess, antagonize your base of frothing at the mouth, horrific, red-faced, white racists in America, yeah, sure, that's going to be really upsetting to them and they don't want to hear that. But if you actually have any kind of sense about you, you will know that it's basically the threat is sort of similar to the threat to the river, from the river to the sea, right? It's like you're freeing the land of colonizers, you're ending the settler colonial state, you're doing land back, basically. That's what you're doing. So obviously it's something that will antagonize racists, but is actually really, really based. And because of this, it's actually made the EFF get more and more attention from Western leftists, and this Red Planet host certainly recommends searching, quote, "America is not welcome in South Africa, Julius Malema" on YouTube, because and just have a field day just checking out Julius.
I'm so Malema pilled, he's so fucking cool.
I can't remember what it is, but there's an address that he gives the it's the EFF like annual general meeting or annual conference or something, and it's this huge fucking stadium. It's full of fucking people, and he rises up on this platform, and he's like got his fist in the air, going like, "Africa, rise up and resist!" And he's just like slowly rising up. It's so good. I can't even remember what it's called. I'm gonna try and get it for you, and hopefully I'll put it in the comments of the video on this on YouTube. But sorry, podcast listeners, I don't know. I just don't know where to find that, but I guess, I don't know, search Julius Malema being hoisted up on a platform chanting. I don't know, maybe you'll find it. But I guess like the reason that I wanted to talk about this story is because not only is it really funny, it's an example of the Streisand effect. If you don't know what the Streisand effect is, it's basically Barbra Streisand, a celebrity back in the day, who I think is a Zionist actually, but whatever, it's by the by at this point, actually like didn't want people to know where her new house was, and because she was going on about it so much, basically she got everyone really interested in where it was, and so journalists ended up finding it and you know, basically telling people where it was. The Streisand effect is this idea that like, you know, the more that you like don't actually want someone to know the truth about something,
the more you just keep going on about it, right? Like, yep. It's yeah. And I think even South Park ended up doing an episode about it or something. And it's just one of those things where it's like, there's so many cases when celebrities or whatever just should have just stopped talking, you know, like they should have just like, I mean, look at Drake and Kendrick. Like Drake should have just.
I was going to bring up Kendrick because it's like Musk is trying to, you know, it's such a serious issue. I'm so afraid of white genocide, and Malema's just going bing bop boom 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 bam, the type of shit I'm on you wouldn't understand, like just and it's just over immediately, you know.
literally. Oh god. So yeah, I think it's a really good thing to highlight. And to be honest, on Red Planet we are trying to like focus a lot more on Africa as a continent and all the different like you know, resistances that are going on in Africa, because actually there's a lot of really good anti-colonial stuff that's going on that I think we all need to really keep an eye on, you know, over the next decade at the very least, because I think that's where we're going to see. I mean, I think we all agree, all the hosts agree that this it's probably going to be where a lot of revolutionary action comes from. But so talking of revolutionary action, take us through the trans news roundup.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is like we'll have more when I finish my interviews. We're going to have a you know, sort of anthology of interviews episode. We'll do the news and then we'll just play the interviews that I've recorded for you. But for now, this is like what's been going on in America. Firstly, trans people across America brace for medical and social precarity as Trump's administration attempts to ban trans people from every aspect of modern life. Trump's executive order banning gender-affirming care for anyone under the age of 19 has already, however, been met with dissent at several levels, as Minnesota doctors sign a joint letter in the Star Tribune saying that their services will not only not disappear, but continue to expand. I have a quote here from NBC. New York Attorney General Letitia James issued a statement Monday telling doctors that state law requires them to continue providing such care. Unfortunately, this has been met by some hospitals preemptively deciding they're going to comply with the order, even though the state attorney general is saying don't do that. It's unclear whether they are transphobic or if they just are worried about more interference from the federal government. And one New York doctor, Dr. Jeffrey Bimbaum, has spoken to NBC to say he will just keep doing his job, quote, until somebody calls me away, adding, according to NBC, that he doesn't think that will happen. Bimbaum, New York doctor, says, if somebody says the sky is green, just because they say it doesn't make the sky green. I'm looking at the medical literature, research that's been done. I'm looking at real people in front of me. I'm not looking at some right-wing religious ideologue who's referring to this as gender ideology. It's no ideology. They have the ideology. I'm dealing with science and medicine. So that's, more positive kind of resistance going on, and really strong stuff from cis allies and people in the medical profession. And I actually had an appointment to do with my own transition healthcare this week, which was quite significant. I'm not going to give more details or tell people in my life about it. But I just wanted to say that I met with someone who's pretty significant in trans healthcare, who just needed to give an opinion on something to continue my process. And And he was just like the whole way through being like, the media obviously wants us to like care about this complete nonsense, and so unfortunately I have to ask like this question, but it's, you know, you and I know it's really, really stupid. And it was just like very reassuring to talk to someone who, like, it's very obvious without even needing to ask it explicitly, just like that they do see us going through a tough time, but in terms of like the medical institutions, like they will continue to be there, they will continue to grow. They're not worried about that. And it's been that way talking to everyone from Trans Plus so far, to be honest. Like they don't seem like particularly worried about it, and that's really reassuring. There is some horrible news I'm going to move on to next, though, because like the more like immediately endangering side of this is like bigots being empowered and enabled by what Trump is doing. A trans man has been killed in upstate New York. His name is Sam Norquist, and so before I go into the details of the story at all, I just want to say, like, I think it requires discretion in the sense that I specifically think trans people should decide how much they want to engage with the story. If you're like listening and want to like skip past this bit, that makes complete sense to me. Cis people, you need to hear about this and you need to internalize how urgently you need to help trans people, and like you need to ask trans people, I mean, ideally trans organizers, but any trans people, like, you know, you need to listen to them first about what organizing you can do to keep us safe. Okay, so Nordquist was abducted by 5 people and held for a month and tortured before being killed. Human remains believed to be those of Nordquist were discovered on February 13th in a field in Yates County, about 50 miles southeast of Rochester, says CNN. Details I'd read said that he had been repeatedly raped, tortured, beaten, and had died after, as I say, like a month of this treatment, at which point the 5 bigots who had been doing this decided to move the body to try to conceal what they'd done. This is obviously completely horrifying. Our thoughts go out to Nordquist and his family, who have, you know, already spoken on this and described him as just like completely wonderful and would do anything for his family. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say about this beyond that, but like it's just this kind of violence will continue until the kind of people who do it are stopped. And you know, there are many more cis allies than there are trans people. Like we're just a tiny, tiny minority and need people to pitch in to organize to keep us safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talked about it a little bit before the actual stream and mentioned it briefly just before, but we actually had yesterday in Auckland here, we had a far right evangelical Zionist church storm a drag event at a library for kids, and like literally like went in there and they were like hitting women, just, you know, like literally just like assaulting people, doing wild shit. And then when they finally got ejected from the venue, they just went up to Ponsonby to the Pride Parade and started doing the same thing up there as well. And this is like, you know, like there was a sermon that morning from their bishop, Brian Tamaki, who's just like a wild, just grifter piece of shit, saying, you know, go in there, you know, basically just go in there and shut this down. He's also in the past called for, like, he's literally said, like, he's called for the heads of queer people, just all this kind of like wild shit like that. And it's not just in America and the UK. It's like a lot of people think New Zealand is like a lot chiller, like we don't have as many guns or whatever like that. But it's like this kind of stuff is ramping up absolutely everywhere, and we need to kind of confront it anywhere that it pops up. But yeah, so it's just one of those things where it's like it's this global like thermometer of like transphobia is just like slowly going up and up and up. And yeah, it's like that thing where, you know, like years ago, especially around the Me Too movement, people were like pushing this whole thing of like, you know, dudes, don't let it slide if you hear like a guy saying something shitty about a woman, or like, you know, saying that he did this or that, whatever, like that. Like that's really how everyone needs to be engaging with transphobia, you know, like even at just like a low level, if someone says something bullshit, it just needs to be like an absolute unified thing across all levels where it's like so personal, professional, everything. Because yeah, the thermometer's going up and it's like hotter than it's been for, you know, a long time. So yeah, it's just,
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like pogroms, like in the
Mm,
buildup of anti-Semitic violence by like the Tsarist regime, the Nazis, and also like by the Zionists against Palestinians. Like you just see
mm.
like a speckling at first of like this kind of violence, and then more and more of it happens until something changes. Like something has to change. Like it has to include calling out your friend if he says, you know, that he treated this woman this way or says something about it, you know, about like a minoritized person or whatever, but it has to go way beyond that at this point. It has to be organizing. Yeah. So to switch to some stuff that's going on in the UK, Queer AF uncovered footage that shows Health Minister and VAT scrapings, Wes Streeting talking about having met with Bayswater. This is a horrible video, and I can't talk about how I feel about it without violating terms of service. So I'll keep this section concise and just say, fuck him. So he talked about like parents' rights and talked about like having met with parents who feel like they're being excluded from like they're not having a say, and it's just like that's not how bodily autonomy works. You tulpa. Um, to end on some positive news, Unison, one of the largest unions in the UK, has opened its conference with a speech, I think titled, or like the main slogan of it was "Unite for More Rights," and it focused very heavily on protecting trans women from the kind of trans misogynist attacks, and on trans people in general, as well as like things to support women and like bodily autonomy. So that's good news, and it's just like we just are in a class war, right? Is the underlying thing until capitalism is ended, and the class war is manifesting as a culture war. And so, like, you just have to, on some level, understand this as warfare, and it is going to carry on being horrible things. There are also going to carry on being wins, and then the wins will overpower the horrible things, and we will be free. That's how this works. But for now, let's talk about the exact opposite side of the planet. Tim, what's going on in Aotearoa?
So it's been a couple weeks. So this is actually like from I think like a week and a half ago. So down here we have Waitangi Day, which is a kind of a celebration of the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi. So this usually we have an event at the treaty grounds, roughly where it was signed, where the local marae hosts a lot of Maori leaders and like important political figures and stuff to go and talk about, you know, what they think like the state of the nation, like what's to come, all this kind of stuff. And it's usually like the prime minister will come or whatever. So prime minister didn't come this year. One of the deputy prime ministers did though. The New Zealand's own shitty, like kind of like shitty crony capitalist libertarian ACT party leader David Seymour, who is just a terrible homunculus of petrochemical interests built into a rough man shape. And so he went along to give a speech. So his whole thing is that he like he has Maori heritage, so he kind of always pulls that card. He's always like, I'm Maori, so I can't be racist, or like my policies aren't racist or whatever because I'm Maori. When he is like, you know, we have this like this like our there's no blood quantum in Maori. There's like, you know, if you have like a great 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 granddad that was Maori, you're Maori. It's just like that's just how it works. He is a dude that grew up as a Pākehā, not knowing that he had Maori ancestry, then one day found out and then immediately started claiming it. So even though he technically is, there is a difference between someone who, you know, grew up knowing all this stuff and engages in the culture, all this kind of stuff like that, versus a guy who just decides and is like, okay, cool, now I can, like use it for shitty identity politics reasons and stuff. And I think like, we can accept that that's a thing. Like, yeah, okay, technically he made the team, but he's not, like he doesn't have the same life experiences and all this kind of stuff. He doesn't have but just basic shit, whatever. So the tribe that he claims descent from, Ngāti Rehia, so they're a far north tribe that they told him not to come. Like they said, and they've said in it before that his attacks on Maori as a whole, on his attacks on the treaty, kind of, bring like immense shame to him, and that he basically, they were kind of like, if you continue doing this stuff, don't use our tribal name, like don't kind of claim us or whatever. And like there have been times where people have been just totally exiled from a tribe, which would mean that he was like technically like genetically Maori in some way, but he's not like, he doesn't have any tribal affiliations, whatever. But he showed up anyway. And so he was welcomed on with everyone else, but like there's a lot of the media didn't really understand exactly what was going on, because there's a huge gap between Pākehā and Maori kind of media or whatever. And like David Seymour and his government have actually worked to underfund Maori media as well in this term, so like the gap is even larger. And so they were welcomed on, but during the introduction, the kaikorero was like, he was saying, you are coming here, but like we're welcoming you in, but we know who you are, we know what you're about, and we know like we don't trust you. Basically like kind of like also kind of like issuing this challenge to him, but saying that at the same time, like we have no interest in what you are bringing to us. Like you can come in, you can sit down and join us, but we're not interested. And so him being there brought like a police presence and everything as well. And so it's the thing, everyone's doing speeches and stuff. And there were a group that when they saw that he was there, they decided to stand and protest. And so this was women of the Haukainga, so local women, all, like respected in the community. And they all had these like red cloaks that had all been like woven with like stuff that like kind of talked about, like the dispossession of Maori land and like, all this kind of stuff on their cloaks. And so there's a thing when something like this is happening, if the whole kainga, like the people at the front, if they turn their back on you, or if they start singing to drown you out, that's like the gong show, or that's like the little hook that comes out and grabs you by the neck and like pulls you off the stage. But obviously not having any understanding of actual Maori culture or anything like that. David Seymour doesn't know any of this stuff. So he got up and they all turned their backs and started singing on him, that's the point that's like, okay, bro, like, next speech or whatever. And he just kept going. So the same person that welcomed him on, who is actually Uncle Abe, we call him. He's rangatira from one of the tribes that I'm from, Ngāti Wai, just came up and just grabbed the microphone and just walked off. And he had a big silk and he was like, oh, bloody hell, my freedom of speech or whatever. And then someone came and grabbed it and put it back and was like, okay, carry on or whatever like that. And then he gave another speech like a little bit later, and the exact same thing happened again. And it was just like, dude, like, shut up. Like, we're not here for this or whatever. And so this triggered this like big like freedom of speech thing about like, they're trying to it's like this wild thing where he's like one of the most powerful people in the country who is given unlimited airtime on TV, newspapers, the internet, everything like that. Literally, even like he's been busted with like botting to, like spread his stuff out there, and people are trying to say that he is having his freedom of speech trampled on because at what is like actually like a like a private gathering that he was told not to attend, that he took the stage and spoke, and then kind of like was like quite rude and all this kind of stuff. And so this is like this whole thing where it's just like this is this guy is directly attacking Maori institutions, defunding them, undermining them, and everything. And then we still have to like, they expect us to still play nice, to still kind of like get up and just let him, say all these things. And Pirahama said afterwards that he was like inspired. I can't remember who said he was inspired by. Maybe Margaret Mutu or Dame Finna, about saying that like he did it because he felt that you have to like he was saying, I want to protect the ears of our children. Like they shouldn't have to hear this stuff, like this bad, like this racist stuff that like his speech was like getting up there and he was like literally talking about how Maori are like kind of just like the victims of themselves, and that like like crime statistics and poverty and all this kind of stuff is just like pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of shit. And he was like, no, like fuck this, like we shouldn't have to listen to this. And then like all the stuff about like like at the moment they're bringing back these like military boot camps, they're building a mega prison, they're like incarcerating Maori at like just incredible rates and stuff, and then we have to pretend like like we even have to like entertain this just like this fantasy version of events like what you're saying. So yeah, so that was kind of like a very like a lot of people really, I guess, like found that really gratifying to see that it's like like we actually don't have to take this. It's the same as like when Hannah tore up the treaty principles bill in parliament and did the haka and stuff. There has been this new wave of people going like, actually, like we're going to reject what is considered like Pākehā decorum, and like civility politics, and we're going to do things that are still like culturally, this is the way that like this is a way that is deemed acceptable for us to handle our shit, and we're going to handle it that way. We don't need to we don't need to play by your rules, because we have our own rules that dictate what is acceptable or not. So yeah, so while a bunch of people in parliament had a big fat sook about it, it was pretty sick. And Uncle Abe is a legend. Everyone loves him up north. That was the other thing. They kind of like they referred to him in the newspapers as a random activist or whatever. It's like, no, this guy is like literally one of the most respected Maori leaders up north that is like internationally known in indigenous communities and all this kind of stuff. It's just like they just they have no idea about us and what's going on. So yeah. Anyway, so what about Mio? What about the organizing for power courses?
Yeah, so I just thought that this would be a nice little bit of hopium, because we did an episode on organizing for power a few months back, just me sort of going on about the basics of the organizing for power training. As chair of Greater Manchester Tenants Union, I have led on the group, the registration and the leading of the group of GMTU members who are taking part in the training. And versus last year I think we had just about 10 people taking part. This year we have 25. So not only have we doubled the amount of members who are taking part, but also me, our comms officer Jade, who's also been on Red Planet talking about what she did for the Don't Pay campaign, and also our staff member Ben, who's also been on Red Planet to talk about GMTU. We are now leading obviously the training, which is really nice, because obviously we all did the training last year. We were in committee positions, but now we're doing a lot more stuff, and it's really nice to sort of see how things grow in that. So not just that, but like the training itself is just hopium in general, because you log on to this webinar and the first thing that you see are these, like, it's like a Twitch chat. It's like, I don't know, a popular Twitch chat like Hassan Abi or something, like going fucking million miles an hour, but it's loads of different languages and everyone's saying things like solidarity, we will win, this, that, and the other. It's just like some of the best fucking shit that you really like. You really just need to see it. They're in over 9,000, insert Vegeta meme if you're a geriatric millennial like me, over 9,000 people in the training this year. And also, I think it's like 9,000, there's 9,000 people. I think there's 900 orgs, or maybe like 800 different organizations, and from all over the world. It's not just the West. It is from, like, the training originates from the West, from Jane McAlevey. She was Canadian, I think, or maybe she might be USA. I can't remember. But like, to see the amount of different organizations from the Imperial periphery, and these are organizations that are being highlighted as well, like being included in what's known as the fishbowl exercise, where like you go to the first webinar training, and then the trainers get like 4 different representatives from different orgs onto the webinar to talk about what their group has basically debated in answering the exercises and dealing with the exercises and stuff. And in the first one, there was a guy from Ghana who was representing, I'm pretty sure it was just like it was called like Domestic Laborer Union, so I imagine that is stuff around like care and also like, I guess, like kitchen work, maybe catering and stuff like that. And then also there was another union that was similar to that from Lebanon. There was a woman from Lebanon. She was talking about, like, her org was to do with, I think it's cleaners. I think it's mostly cleaners that she deals with, but it was like a global organization that, like, we're talking like a global union that basically organizes specifically in places like Lebanon, because like they have so little resources compared to in the West, so they get funding from various different places. It's really, really cool, inspiring stuff. And the various different kinds of organizations taking part as well are like really, really inspiring. Like, there are so many tenants unions this year. Like, this is like a marked difference from last year. There are loads of tenants unions. So we actually made an effort in one of the organizer sort of group lead chats to try and get some other tenants unions to join another group chat, so that we could basically figure out how to adapt the exercises to be more relevant to housing, because a lot of the exercises are all around workplace organizing, and obviously it's like, what they're trying to get across in sort of like, a breakdown of the exercise is basically you're presented with 4 different people in your workplace, all of which have varying different experiences in the union and outside of it, and you're supposed to identify the organic leader in that exercise, basically. So we basically just changed words like, workplace to apartment block, and I've worked at this site for however many years. I've lived in this building for 7 years. Oh, I used to be a union rep in this building. Oh, I used to be on the board of residents at this building, kind of thing. So, we adapted it to be for housing, but also there's lots of other groups like environmentalist groups. There's lots of groups that are doing Palestinian liberation advocation. So it's really, really just like a great thing to see. And there are so many, like, the messages in the chat are just like incredible. It's like full of people who are like learning stuff for the first time about, just how to organize your community and how to speak to people. It's really good hopium. And I can't shout out the course enough. Like, it's really, like, really powerful, hence the name Organizing for Power. So yeah, just wanted to give that a bit of a shout out, bit of hopium. So there you go. It's not just because I was late to the show and couldn't write another news story. It's definitely not because of that. Anyway, so why don't you tell us about a story that you had time to write?
Yeah, sure thing, Mule. I just wanted to say that, like, right after the episode, I might have told you this on the next episode, but like right after the episode when you walked us through organizing for power training, like, I was at a friend's who's like involved in some communist organizing, and they had a Jane McAlevey book on the table. And I was just thinking how, like, people have been yearning for just the instructions to just do the shit. Like we've been doing this for a few years now, trying to get people who like nominally have these politics in online spaces to go and get offline and get involved in stuff that will actually help people. And like, it definitely has. There's definitely one effect where it's like the people who are online are self-selecting to be like people who are just looking at posts and doing nothing of actual value ever. But like, it definitely also just this number of people who want the instructions has grown and grown. Like, I said something in replies to a friend on Blue Sky the other day that was like very normal thing for me to say that I've been saying for years, where I'm just like, you just have to give people the instructions. We just need to to be doing it. And like, for one of the first times ever, I've had someone like several people like replying to me being like, okay, please show me like where to go and what to do. Like, I really, really, really want to know. Like, I'm desperate to know right now. Yeah, so it's like, of course people are pouring into it, right? Because like, people want these answers. I've given myself a positive and pretty funny trans story to make up for the other trans news that's going on. So puppy girl hacker polycule leaks police training manuals. Pause up, who saw this one? Puppy girl hackers decide to take matters, quote, into our own paws this week by hacking Lexipol, a company that creates training manuals for first responders in America. The hack included, quote, 8,543 files relating to training, procedural, and policy manuals, as well as customer records that contain names, usernames, agency names, hashed passwords, physical addresses, email addresses, and phone numbers, according to the Daily Dot, who has sent the information by the group. Quote, in remarks to the Daily Dot, a hacker from the Puppy Girl hacker polycule said the group targeted Lexipol because there aren't, quote, enough hacks against the police. So that's like fantastic. I love this. I'm not sure how much more there is to say about this right now. Obviously, like with hacks of this type, we like information is given en masse to a journalistic outlet. They'll need their legal team as well as their journalists to look over it to just to figure out what is like stuff that they can work with and in what ways. Sometimes you get leads that you then can follow through on, even though you can't publish the information directly or whatever, right? There isn't this kind of like the idea of like receiving stolen goods is not the same for information. You're sent a bunch of information by some hackers. It's not the same as like being given someone's TV that's been nicked. But it is, it would be if you were to just publish it all. So hopefully we see some interesting stuff come out of that. And I think this is also a nice reminder for people who, we get this question fairly often on the show, speaking of like people asking for the steps to take. People ask about like, I'm like housebound and like disabled, and I spend all my time like doing a work from home job. And I just don't know how, like, I don't see how I can get out to a union meeting, get involved in that way. And uh, this is a pretty good way to get involved from home. People are scared off by like technical expertise that they need to learn to do hacking, but I know that a lot of the kinds of poppy girls who had asked that question have work from home tech jobs, and that's the kind of work from home job they have. So they have some of the technical expertise already. RIP to puppy girls who went into academia and the humanities. Additional funny web security hacker news. The Doge website got hacked. Basically, it turns out that their database was just available for anyone to write to. And so someone hacked in to say, these experts left their database open, and it appeared on the front page of the Doge website. You're going to tell us more about Doge just now before we lead into the whole episode talking about the collapse of the American empire. So yeah, why don't you tell us about some Doge news?
So basically, it looks like Musk is using his money, tech, connections, blah, 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 to weaken America's democratic systems and consolidate more control, which is classic auto coup vibes. So an auto coup is when someone that has power is using the system or dismantling the system to consolidate power. It's not that it's like they're an outside force, even though it's like technically the guy's a civilian, right? He's been given this power and he's using it to just, to keep it and to expand his own power, to take more control. So yeah, the unofficial Department of Government Efficiency, fucking cringe, Doge. I always like, is it like Doge? Like what? How do they expect us to say this? I don't know.
I don't know.
Stupid.
I
Anyway,
liked there was a post somewhere where someone was like, if you have offline friends who have never heard of this, tell them it's pronounced doggy because it's named after a funny picture of a doggy on the internet.
yeah.
So that they click what's going on. Like there's a picture of a funny doggy on the internet, and I found that pretty helpful. I was like, yeah, maybe I will start calling it doggy. Like,
yeah. So doggy is infiltrating key federal agencies like USAID, Treasury, and CDC, and it's so it's like the entire doggy crew is tech execs, far right fuckwits, and just like ridiculously unqualified young engineer dudes. And so they're pushing to defund and dismantle various government operations, completely bypassing any kind of like checks and balances or fail safes or anything that do exist, and it's like, obviously there is a huge amount of corruption in the American government or whatever, and they are trying to push this as an antidote to that corruption, where actually it is just more corruption. It's like they're like, the problem is it's these other guys that are corrupt, so they're defunding a lot of stuff that just isn't corrupt. It's just like an actual thing. There's no real rhyme or reason aside from them being like, oh, this costs a lot of money and we could probably use that. Like, we could probably take what they do and funnel that money to one of our organizations or businesses or a contract, and claim that we're doing it for cheaper, but really it's just, like, they're not going to be able to deliver on any of this shit. So the team includes a bunch of like Musk like barons and loyalists, like the president of the Boring Company, Steve Davis, and it was like this whole thing blew up with a bunch of 6 young dudes, all between sort of 19 and 24. At the moment, it's 5. It's gone down to 5 because one of them, so when their names came out, which is like, it's not protected information or anything like that, it got published by journalists. A bunch of people looked into them and found out one of them
government officials, surely.
Yeah, exactly.
Their names should be public.
Like, they have access to literally everyone's in America's private information. So, like, you should at least know who they are, should at least be able to look up their internet presence and find out about their like deranged racist online footprints. So, so one down from that group so far. For just like
one down. Damn, he was that easy. I wonder if the rest of them could be taken out in any sort of ways. That's crazy.
Yeah. Like, it was kind of wild because he got fired for all the hectic racist stuff, and then JD Vance is like being like, oh, like, it's horrible that he that he's like a victim of cancel culture and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, you're his boss, you guys are the ones that canceled him. But yeah, they are looking at bringing him back in some way, which is just like fucking like so deranged. Like, I don't know, like, it's just this organization that is run by the whims of the worst people alive. And so it's like, do you want a kid with these like deranged extremist views about, like, he was like literally saying like, yes, I'm a Nazi, I'm a racist, I hate like all Indian people, all this kind of stuff. Like, oh yeah, I'll trust that guy with like literally all of your private sensitive information. We should get him to tell us how the economy should work, and all this kind of stuff. So so Doggy going around threatening to bring in US Marshals, fully just like going into places and just gutting them, like firing people, putting them on administrative leave and all this kind of stuff, like going into restricted areas, accessing restricted information that normally you would need a very high level of clearance to access, and then he's just like, bring my children in, bring them in. They'll sort this place out. So Yeah, so there was like some controversy when they shut down USAID. So USAID is, the department that handles various like aid programs and allocations all around the world. Because this is like a humanitarian aid provider, it does result in people, like a lot of countries out in the imperial periphery, losing access to a lot of a lot of things that they really need, which also, like, so there's this thing where all of these Americans that are just, like, they're drinking the musk, they're inhaling it, and they're like, this is good because that money going overseas is money that could be going to us Americans, whereas, like, okay, no, it's just going to go
Yeah.
to Musk now. But like
I
the
mean,
thing,
well, it's that whole mindset is so bizarre. Like, Joe, who we had on the bonus episode, like texted me during the week and was like, "What is going on with Trump and tariffs? Like, I don't
yeah,
understand why he's so like obsessed with like trade deficit." And I was like, "Okay, look, he's got Wall Street brain, right? He
yeah,
thinks he's the CEO of a company, and if a company was doing deals with other companies and they were getting less than the other party was getting in those deals, then that company would be being screwed over. So it
mm,
makes sense to him that the trade deficits are bad, but he doesn't understand that's actually like the main tool of American economic
exactly,
domination,
yeah,
because he doesn't understand how imperialism works. So
yeah,
he is just like not just like tilting at windmills, but just like tearing them the fuck down because
yeah,
he thinks that like he just doesn't understand where his power comes from. Well, and this is
exactly,
the thing, right? It's soft power. So
yeah,
this is what you wanted to like to discuss about US aid, is that like the um the threat of like we're giving a helpful thing, but it could go away if you disagree with us,
mm,
is like a soft power. It's not
yeah,
like there's this distinction: soft power and hard power is like boots on the ground,
mm.
right? But like soft power is like this.
And now it's like, okay, well, if that aid has been taken away, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of countries, a lot of national liberation movements that are going to actually find themselves a lot more freer. Like, it's like, okay, cool, well, we don't actually have to bow down to them anymore. And there's probably a lot of right-wing paramilitary groups that are going to have some like really hard conversations about how they can't afford to, like, buy, I don't know, whatever
They're gonna have to
anymore.
cut back on the avocado toast.
Exactly, like, it's this thing where it's like that's where that money was going. Like during Brazil's military dictatorship, there's people saying like, oh yeah, there was USAID stickers on the electric generators that they were using to torture us with. Like, it's even when there's like this aid money that goes to Palestine that they're talking about, it's like that goes filtered through Israeli businesses. It's like it's a very deliberate thing how this money gets channeled and where it goes to. It's not just like, like this kind of American chud perspective where they're like, oh, it's just like we're feeding kids in Africa, but we're not feeding the vets back home. Like, the vets are not going to see any of this money. They are going to be poorer than ever, like. So yeah, so there's a huge misunderstanding, just like the American
Mm-hmm.
misunderstanding of what tariffs actually are and how that was going to affect them. They also don't know, what this USA stuff is, and the government is
Yeah,
being very deceptive about what that is. So
and
yeah, so
there's a bigger plan, and we'll discuss that when we get to
mm,
the discussion stuff. But I said the same thing to Joe. I was like, there is more to it than just Trump dumb, but the
yeah.
more that there is to it is itself really dumb. So like
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So yeah, we got the doggy collaborating with Trump's boys, like all like Stephen Miller, and even like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is just like, how is she still a thing? So yeah, and they all share the goal of slashing government spending, which is basically just this idea of like just stripping back regulations and all these kind of things so that they are free to live their Mad Max fantasies inside their walled communities or whatever. So yeah, but there's like a lot of stuff, a huge lack of accountability that has drawn the attention of like literally everyone, all all watchdog groups, everything like that. And so yeah, like it's pretty wild. It looks like they're doing the classic thing to destabilize, defund, and then privatize, which is exactly what we're also having happen down here at the moment with our current libertarian kind of coalition partners. And I think that's going to be it has been a big trend. We've seen this a lot in Latin America over the last couple of years. Yeah, that's going to be the playbook for the right over the next little while, I think. I mean, not that it hasn't been in the past, but I think that's where we're heading. But yeah, that kind of wraps up our news section. So we're going to carry on talking about a little bit of this stuff and the kind of decline of the American empire. But yeah, before we get into that, just wanted to remind everyone that we can do what we do because of the direct support of our viewers. If you want to help us do it, you can jump on over to Patreon. There's a bunch of different tiers. You can support as much or as little as you want. Supporting us gets you access to our Discord, and we do even private streams. We do like bonus episodes as well. I think we got like 6 of those down at the moment. Yeah, so
we got
joining the Patreon.
We got 3 that are from the DS9 streams where Mule and I show TM episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And we got 3 we've just been hanging out with people and just chatting about organizing and different political stuff. Tim told me about the history of K Road. It was super interesting. We had a chat about body politics and stuff. I actually kind of want to do a follow-up to that because I was thinking about surgery and the politics of the body around that, which I think we didn't get into that much.
Are we gonna get Crimes of the Future pilled? Are we gonna?
Hell yeah! Maybe that's something we could all watch. I don't know. Anyway, we've got some great discussions there. We're gonna have some more great ones. We've got more organizers and some content creators who are gonna come on for fun chats, and pleasingly some content creators with historical involvement in organizing as well.
Yeah. So sign up to Patreon if you want to help support. It means a lot to us, and and you also get access to all that kind of stuff. But yeah, now we should pivot into the main subject that we wanted to talk about. This kind of America's collapse at the moment. Wow, the beginning of the collapse of the empire, which has obviously got a lot to do with Trump, with Musk, with Gothic Dark MAGA. Grimes is there. Grimes is at the schizo coup or whatever she said. Last night was a schizo coup. What does that mean? What's going on here?
So I was chatting to our co-host Kira, who's an extended mental health break from the show and from streaming in general, because unfortunately online is a terrible place. And she was telling me that she watched this video. She's really scared about it because it felt like everything in the video is beat for beat exactly what they're doing. And the video, I can't remember if it's called Gothic Dark MAGA, but it's something that Elon Musk said, right? He was wearing a black Make America Great Again hat in a Gothic font. And he was like, I'm MAGA, but I'm this. I'm Gothic Dark MAGA. So cringe. And so it's basically a video about what the plan is. And I'll discuss it. But, I'll say the same stuff I've said to Kira, which is that which is the thing I was saying a minute ago. There is more to it, but the more is also really dumb. So let's talk a bit about Curtis Yarvin's Butterfly Revolution. I don't know if you've heard of a book called Neoreactionary Basilisk by L. Sandifer. It's a great book, and it just basically looks at the philosophic roots of neo-reaction, this big modern wave of reactionary politics. What are the actual philosophies driving it? And unsurprisingly, they're all really fucking dumb. So if you've heard of Rocco's Basilisk, which is this idea that AI in the future, when AI is in control of everything, because obviously AI is going to be in control of everything, you'll be able to read all the thoughts you've ever had, all your tweets, all your everything. And if you were anti-AI, then it will torture you forever, is the idea, right? And so thinking about
this is actually just point out that this is actually how Grimes and Elon met. So she wrote a song about it, and something like he he searched on Twitter for like references to it, and she popped up, and so these two very unique, special little snowflakes touched across the earth like this. And
Oh wow, it's a
yeah,
beautiful love story. And now he's kidnapped her son. So
yeah.
it's all concepts like this that basically all point toward the same idea, which is fundamentally all of these philosophers agree that like the only future is like hyper Hitler mega fascism, and therefore the best thing you can do is just give into it and worship it as much as possible and get on side as much as possible and support it, because otherwise you will be crushed by it. And this is moronic for so many reasons that we'll get into, but that's basically the idea driving it. And Curtis Yarvin is one of the most significant intellectuals in this movement, and he has this idea called the butterfly revolution. And it's called that because it's going to land very gently like a butterfly, which, as you can see, is going great because there are planes falling out of the sky every 2 days. No one's even noticing the like delicate, gentle revolution they're pulling off. And the idea is all about just like stripping back the government as they're doing, consolidating all the power, like unifying the police forces together, and then just having this like neo-monarchy, this like running America like it's a company and Trump is the CEO, like Trump already thinks how it works. And then everything being kind of captured within like digital serfdom, like Silicon Valley guys are in control of absolutely everything. Everything is run through an app. And therefore, the only way that people can be part of society is by being part of their app, right? And that's basically the idea. And then like the extra steps of this are like to mobilize their chuds and like embolden their like fascists to like terrorize people and defend the new regime. Okay, so that's the idea.
I think that it's important to, I guess, point out that this is like this sort of very unique situation whereby finally liberals in the USA are having to like reckon with the fact that their inaction and bullshit has resulted in something that scares them finally, rather than something that has been scaring other marginalized people, or leftists and communists for a long time. In that there's also another video. I didn't watch this video that Sophie's talking about, but I watched another video.
You sent me the wisecrack one.
The wisecrack version, which was something I got excited when I saw this because I noticed recently that wisecrack was getting more woke. Call it woke crack. But
that's what we learned about woke school in the drug session.
Exactly, you got to learn about woke crack. It's really important, which is not wisecrack, as you're about to find out. So wisecrack had this video pop up, and I got really excited because it said capitalism is over. What's next? And I was like, that's us. We say that. That's our slogan. But then after what's next, it said what's next is worse, and I was like, oh. So I watched it, and it was the wisecrack guy basically being like, after capitalism, it's going to be tech feudalism. And feudalism is like... And then he just started describing capitalism. Like... And it was really annoying because it was like, okay, bro, like, you're just like... You're talking about people owning land, and you're saying that somehow people are going to be serfs in apps. Like somehow
in digital land.
Yeah, somehow you could be born into digital landed gentry.
Yeah.
Somehow you'll be a digital serf. And I'm like, okay, man, I just think that you're like not right. And I think
I can't overstate what a bubble these people live in.
Really, like, this is the thing. Like, this is the fault of like I said, it's this unique concoction of Western liberals finally going, oh no, we might need to do something. We need to think about what it is, and but don't listen to the communists because they've got wacky ideas. It can't be communism. That just doesn't work. You know, it's that on top of capitalist realism, on top of I just don't know. It's just this like horrific like decadent individualism that exists in the West, whereby they're just like, there can't possibly be like a revolution. It's just going to be tech feudalism. But then they're just like, yeah, it's capitalism, but it's worse. It's worse. It's capitalism with less rights, with less sort of like regulation, which is just like, I don't know. Anyway, the long and short of it is that I think it's quite funny that actually this is sort of a philosophical thing. You talked about this Rocco's basilisk thing, where AI runs everything, and what's really funny is that is the plot of a Harlan Ellison novel called "I Have No Mouth, But I Must Scream," which is about an AI that
goes
takes
so
over the
hard.
world.
It's a good fucking story.
There's even a DOS game based on it. That fucking
I played that game.
Yeah, it's so good. I played it back as a kid, and it gave me nightmares. It was like so sick.
I'm not surprised. It's such a good game, and it's such a good book. And that's the thing. It's like it's so funny that like I have no mouth, but I must scream is the future that like American liberals are thinking is gonna happen because they can't be bothered to do anything. They can't be bothered to like do any organizing, do a revolution. And it's funny that actually like the philosophers that you're talking about that talk about this Rocco's basilisk are like, oh well, the solution is to worship it, get on board, just support it as much as possible, because that's what liberals do, isn't it? That's what they do. They just go, oh well, give up, can't beat him, join him, like nonsense bollocks. So it's quite like, I guess, I don't know what you call it, like what is that, like quite an apt sort of like scenario that we're in. I don't know what you'd call it.
I think
ironic
what's going
sorry
on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it's the irony of confirmation bias. I think that like these people live in a bubble. I recommend that people read Palo Alto, A History of California Capitalism and the World by Malcolm Harris. It's a really, really, really good book. And in the introduction, he says that like when he was in maybe even preschool, like a supply teacher like urgently came to the kids and was like, okay, listen, I need to tell you this right now. Like, you understand that like the world outside Palo Alto isn't like this, right? Like you live in a weird place, and that this is not how the rest of the world works. And like, this is what I mean about confirmation bias. Everything, these people have machine politics. They want to build a totalizing system. Everything that is inside of their machine is visible to them. And there's enough of it inside the machine. Obviously, like apps are big. Apps control a lot of stuff, or like a lot of things are done through apps. Whether they're really in control is like, well, could they work just fine without them, right? And a lot of things be just fine without them, but they can see everything that's inside of their machine, and they're like, well, that's the whole world, but they can't see what's outside of their machine, right? So if you think you can see everything, and therefore I can just change everything a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and then we'll land our revolution, it will all just like settle into place, that the trap will swing shut, and it will be completely impossible to change anything forever. We'll be kings, right? If you believe this, it's perfect confirmation bias, because you can't see everything that would disprove it. You can't see the things that aren't currently in the trap, and you can't see people's ability to just go and live as part of that society that exists outside of your app, right? These are Silicon Valley ghouls. The way they are used to stealing people's stuff is by pushing terms of service updates. They literally, no, I'm serious. Like they push through big contracts and, EULAs, right? End user license agreements. And you click through it, you don't read it, and you go, yeah, fine. And then someone writes a piece in the Washington Post and goes like, yeah, you agreed to this thing that means like all your nudes like belong to Mark Zuckerberg now.
Yeah.
And you're like, shit, I guess I did do that. So I did. Oh well. And you just don't care that much, because it's like, well,
yeah,
I mean, it's a big faceless company. I guess my nudes all belong to Mark Zuckerberg now.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to care that much? He's got all the nudes in the world to choose from. He's probably not going to care that much. And like, you just don't care. But like, if it's the government, if it's how society works, like you will fucking care. And you can't just like sneak through a thing where you just like flip to the bottom of the page and hit the consent button, and now it's like reality. That's not how reality works.
No, I think that, sorry.
No, go on.
I think that like what you've been saying like over the last few minutes has made me realize that I think that apps are like the biggest hoodwinking of the last the last decade, really, the last decade and a half. Because it's like when apps first got on the scene, it was like, oh wow, you can now I don't know, like you can have a little thing that looks like you're drinking a beer from your iPhone, and that looked like a bit silly and fun. And then it sort of like evolved, and it was like, oh, well, now we've got an app for your bank, so you can do all your banking on an app. And it's like, oh, all right, that's interesting. So I could do an app on banking on an app when I'm out on a phone, and I get 4G, so that means I've got internet when I'm out and about, and I could do that. That's pretty good. If I'm struggling, I need to transfer some money, like etc. And it gets like. It gets to a point. It's like, well, like, what is truly like the most useful app? Like, truly the most useful app might be like, I don't know, in reality, the compass app, right? Where you have like a compass on your phone, and it's like, okay,
the calculator, maybe the
maybe
notes
the
app.
calculator, literally calculator, notes app. When it comes down to it, like we haven't actually when it comes to technology, people have this like, I guess like mist over their eyes that is like, oh, we got loads of apps, and I got Deliveroo.
The Butlerian
Uber,
jihad is coming from June. Like literally, people are gonna say, are about to say, like, computers are thinking too much for us, and we want no more of it. And your phone should just be able to like take a picture that you can't send anywhere. It should be able to take notes and have a calculator and tell you the weather, and like that's it. And that's like all it can do. I'm really serious with this.
I've been saying for a while that I feel like there is like a kind of anti-AI Luddite movement that is like probably just on the horizon, and especially with, when you see stuff like when you see industries getting hit with it that I think historically have been like, like high value jobs and like, things that people would be like, like legal and medical professions and stuff like that. When you see them starting to get jobs taken by AI, like, because at first everyone's just like, oh, it's okay, it's just like, it's just like the low income jobs or whatever like that, and because people already kind of have a bunch of shitty preconceived ideas about that anyway. But when people start going like, oh shit, like now they don't need any legal secretaries, or now they don't need any, like medical researchers or anything like that, then it starts going like, oh wait, like, but we're still like, like that idea of like the Industrial Revolution was like, oh, we have these machines, so everyone will have to work less, but it ends up that we just have to work more, and the machines just make it more profitable for, the capitalists or whatever. I think that there's going to be that same moment where we go like, man, like, and I know this is a conversation that everyone has already been having, like in circles like our own, where they're like, why are the machines making the art? We should be the ones making the art while they do the jobs. And it's going to get to that point where the general public is like, man, like, are we gonna, like, is our life gonna get any better because of this? Because it seems like it's just getting worse.
They are not ready for how willing most people are to just put down their phones and never pick them up again.
Oh
like,
yeah.
They really, really think, like I say, they think the trap's gonna swing shut, and they just can't believe that most people would like to not be on social media anymore and like not have their life run through an app and all this stuff. And it will make their fucking head spin, like how sharply it will happen, seriously. And so this brings to the main thing I want, like probably the biggest problem with this plan is like, if there is a crash in the tech industry, it's fucked. It's like unbelievably fucked. And all the biggest tech companies are currently investing loads in AI, and it's a product everybody hates. They're cramming into everything that isn't making them money. Like, it's literally costing them money. And the only way that can not be like causing an actual like recession within the industry and then a collapse of everything that is dependent on like Silicon Valley, which is all of America now, is for them to keep on pouring more money into it faster to big up the hype around AI more. But that's a bubble. Like, I've just defined a bubble, like the most classic possible economic situation of a bubble. When it bursts, like, it's going to be a complete like economic bloodbath for them. And like, that's the end of like the alliance between like Trump's administration and Silicon Valley. Like, Trump doesn't like losers. Like, he doesn't like to work with losers. Like, you remember the thing about John McCain? He said, I like people who weren't captured. It's like, he's so dumb. Like, there is this quote, I can't remember where I heard it now, but it was about Musk being in charge, like, quote, like, while Trump rots in front of Fox. And that's what, like, he wants to just be able to sit and watch his stories, and that's it, and like do nothing else. And yeah, I just think I think that they're not prepared for this. If we think about the OODA loop, right, the observe, orient, decide, and act, like their ability as one like coalition between like the far right and tech bros, like it's able to act, as I said before about like Palestine action and that, like as long as it's profitable. And that's going to be one of the main ways that it falls apart. But then also like their ability to orient themselves and decide depends on like Trump trusting them with power. And he is so quick to turn on people. Like if he turns on them, and he will if they start losing ground at all, like it will be so quickly over for them. And then like Trump was completely incompetent the first time around, and he will be again. Like I don't know. I said in my What Now video, like it's really important we all understand that Trump is not trying to implement hyper Hitler mega fascism. He is trying to get rich and get out.
Yeah.
Like they all understand, the whole ruling class understand they're in charge of an empire in decline, and it's declining even more rapidly now. Yeah. But it already was, like it was already falling apart, but now it's declining even more rapidly. So they just want to like loot the place and get the fuck out. And like that thing about like legal secretaries, right? Is it's not that like a legal, like a, you know, a lawyer is like a bullshit job exactly, but these are still jobs that like just basically like you fill out paperwork until the end of the day and the bell goes, and then you get like a share of imperialist plunder.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's like also like it's so off limits to a lot of working class people, you know, and it's like generally like money is the decider in a lot of interactions with lawyers and engaging with the legal system as well. So it's like, yeah, there's definitely stuff going on there.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was pretty funny earlier on, Tim, when you were talking about like there's like an anti-AI Luddite movement waiting to sort of like spearhead this, because it's already begun, and it's this person called August Lamb. And I'm bringing this up because it's quite funny. I didn't actually think that I would relate this to the discussion that we're having today, but this person called August Lamb has written a book, I think, which is called what is it here? You Don't Need a Smartphone, A Practical Guide to Downgrading and Reclaiming Your Life, which is obviously like a pretty boomer thing to talk about, but actually...
I'm a professional influencer and content creator, and I've done this, and like it's just... It's so much better. It's so much fucking better.
Yeah. And it's so funny because it's like this article that this August Lamb person like sort of slipped under the radar. It's from about a month ago. It just says you don't need a smartphone, a practical personal guide to downgrading your device. And he talks about like switching to a quote unquote dumb phone, which is just like it's a Nokia, so, you know, whatever. Like it just doesn't have any apps on it basically. And there's all these like funny. It's a really funny article, and I'd really recommend everybody read it because there's all these little illustrations where it's like. There are these cool ones where it's like levels of attention, and at the top it's like scrolling, right? And then next to that it's like maybe watching TV or being on the PC, and then next it's like reading a book, and then at the bottom it says thinking, and then at the bottom, the very bottom, it says doing absolutely nothing, simply existing in the world, needing no entertainment. And it's like it's just gold. But then there are these sort of like funnier bits where one of the subheadings is like, how are you supposed to navigate without a maps app? And the guy's like, what you can do is look at a map on your computer or buy one from a shop. You can even write down directions. And there's like an example that he's done of like how to write down directions.
It's actually like, that's interesting. This is just like a super quick tangent, but I remember reading a little while back about the section of your brain that is responsible for you being able to follow directions and all this kind of stuff. It's like it's part of your hippocampus, and it also is kind of like this weird part of your brain that makes you feel satisfied. Especially like a lot of people find that if they have certain, you know, things in their hippocampus or whatever, that they have like high job satisfaction and stuff. And the people that have this, like of any demographic that has been studied the most, is London cabbies. And they're just like, because they know like all the streets and everything like that, and apparently just their job satisfaction is like crazy high. They fucking, you know, they have really well developed hippocampuses, and they just have like this encyclopedic knowledge of like streets and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I just thought that was actually like, like, man, like, should we just get rid of Google Maps and we'd all like be a little bit happier?
Yeah, fuck
I
that.
saw a road atlas the other day. Like I was helping my girlfriend clear out her parents' house, and like that was just one of those like road atlases, and I was like, fuck, I haven't seen these since like when I was a kid. And I would help my mom drive around to like go to some like sightseeing thing she wanted to take us to, and like it was just so crazy nostalgic. And I was like, oh yeah, we all did just fine, right? Like actually we did just fine, and like like we don't need like it was really striking.
You could even
Um,
probably like, if you really, really wanted to, you could get one of them GPS devices and have that in your car or on your bike if you want.
yeah,
But
yeah,
at least it's not got fucking Twitter on it, you know? At least
yeah,
it's not got,
literally.
like, it's a
Like
thing to do a thing with.
it's the ability for your phone to dictate politics to such a
Yeah.
degree, and like to control people's like reality, and like COVID misinformation, all this stuff. Like it's insidious, and people are sick of it. That's the important thing to be saying here. Um, but yeah, like it's not just like what if like the tech industry crashes because it's just not doing well, but also like tech unions like cause it, like throwing a spanner in the works this way, like would also cause the same like OODA loop problem, because like
Mm,
in the same way, like they just wouldn't be able to do. Unions democratize workplaces, and so if unions gained power, then they would be able to have a say, and that means directly injecting into the like orient decide kind of part of the thing, because you would be controlling like the decision making process within the tech industry. But like I think there's something bigger here, which is like we talked about the International Longshoremen's Association a few weeks ago on the show now,
yeah.
and like the massive strike they did. It was only like 3 days, but it caused billions of dollars of damage to the US economy. And like they I don't know what their positioning is. Like I don't know like how ready they are for a general strike against all the shit that's going on right now. But if they did an ongoing strike with no set end date, it would be over instantaneously. Like it would be over so fast. They control every port on the east coast of America, like of North America, right? Like not just the United States, like into Canada and Mexico as well. Like they are such a massive union, and they can just shut down trade across one side of the entire continent. Like it would just wreck it completely. Um, so that's like I wanted to kind of bring us to a bit of a power analysis, because we've been talking a little bit about how like America's general power has been shrinking. We talked a little bit about like how there isn't like the popular base for fascism in America, and this is true in the UK as well. Like a lot of people are worried about like Nigel Farage and like the Reform Party, Tommy Robinson, all this stuff. They also don't have like a widespread populist base in the same way. Like it's spectacular fascism. It's not like populist fascism. Um, and yeah, I guess I just wanted to talk about like where the power lies in what's coming up in the US, really. Because like the consolidation of police departments is a huge part of this plan. And so that makes a huge difference about like American fascism's ability to like influence like domestic authoritarianism and like control the people in America. Obviously, so okay, the factions of this as I see it, like you've got the police all unifying under Trump, like him like rolling together like sheriff's departments who are like notoriously hyper racist. Like these are some of the most fascist police in the entire world. Like together with big metropolitan police departments who are also very fascist and often like involved in a lot of organized crime. Um, but then having like ICE is very obviously like Trump's secret police. It's very obviously his Gestapo or his SS, right? And so it's this like very special um kind of yeah, like particular like fascist paramilitary. And then speaking of paramilitaries, there are more beyond that, right? An analogy I draw though to like the citizens militia people, the neo-Nazis we saw in Cincinnati this week and whatever, I would draw a parallel between them and the Black Hundreds, which I think is really worth bringing up here. Like in the Russian Revolution, people often like fail to see the I'm getting super Hegelian this episode, but like there are like two sides in every revolution. There's revolution and counter-revolution, and people often think of it as being like there was just one political side, and it's the one that won, and the other one didn't exist at all. But as much as there were like communists before Nazis came to power in Germany, there were also like mega reactionaries and fascists who worshipped the Tsar in Tsarist Russia before the Soviets gained power. And so the ones who are most analogous to like the Patriot Front, the Proud Boys, whatever, are called the Black Hundreds. These are these awful guys who had they did a bunch of horrible, like racially motivated violence. They did a bunch of pogroms, but also they did a bunch of really cringe, embarrassing stuff because fascism is a loser ideology and these people suck. So they'd do stuff like they would be doing a pogrom and they'd be smashing up like a Jewish-owned business, and they would carry a portrait of the Tsar, like a framed portrait of the Tsar. One of them would be carrying it, and the other guys would ask the picture as if they were talking to daddy right there. Like, should we do this thing? Should we smash this thing up? Should we set this thing on fire? And the guy carrying it would be like, yes, my children, you should. Like, they would do shit
I can
like
imagine
this, right?
that like as actually like a really kind of like horrific and like taunting thing, you know, like something out of like Funny Games, if anyone's familiar
Yeah.
with that film.
Yeah. It's creepy.
You know,
It's
like,
creepy. It's like it's cringe, but it's also very creepy. Yeah, big time. Because also like they were people who saw the Tsar as like this god king, like literally like, divine right. Like, and there's an extension of that as well, which is like a lot of peasants in the Russian Revolution, like also saw the Tsar's power as that like totalizing, and they thought that like the people around him were stopping him from like saving the day, and like he wasn't like aware of the plight of the peasants. So there was this famous the massive march that led to a bunch of like stampeding people, like people got trampled, where basically like peasants tried to come into like the capital to see the Tsar and like beg him to fix everything, and the Tsarist police, the police at the capital didn't want this crowd of people who believed in like an alternate reality where they worshipped the Tsar as a god king getting in there, and they shot at them, and the crowd rioted. And so there's an interesting, I don't know if there's anything
like that's a
familiar.
thing in a
never
lot
heard
of
of that
monarchies, right?
But
Like that's like,
that's
I
a
mean,
unique situation.
The
that's
capital
similar
police.
Yeah. There's like, you know,
Um,
like that whole idea in like England where it's like, you know, you get all these like old like grannies that would be like, oh, it's just that the king or queen just doesn't know what's
yes,
happening to
exactly.
us. Like the
Yeah.
queen would actually help us out, but she just doesn't know because, you know,
Yeah.
like there's all the politicians and all that in the way, you know, and it's just kind of like, no, like
Well, it's
you know.
people think that cults are a very specific thing that only exists at one like social level, but actually like kingship just works as a cult. Like the belief that the king is like completely morally pure and completely believes like agrees with you about everything is like a fundamental part of monarchy and of cults, because it's just the same thing but bigger. Like it's just literally the same thing but bigger. And so like cult leaders always have like someone they delegate to who like runs things as like the tough guy who like it allows the base to all believe the cult leader agrees with them and sees them and like just doesn't know about their struggle, and like if they did they would definitely help them. um yeah, and it's the same thing anyway. So I think that like there are a few different things going on like the reactionary side. There's obviously these like Silicon Valley Rocco's Basilisk guys. There's the consolidating police forces, there's the paramilitaries, and there's a bunch of rural conservatives who believe in an alternate reality where Trump is God Emperor and is completely moral. And I think those are all like it's fairly easy to see historical analogs there. Historical analogy will only get us so far, right? But like that's a part of it in this power analysis. I think that the American military is a huge thing to talk about, which like we can't know because it exists kind of behind a firewall. Like there is a very deliberate like separating off of like what's going on inside the military, even like veterans can't really discuss it that well, or like aren't plugged into it as currently, or like are restricted from talking about it or whatever. But like it often, for me, it comes down to this. The biggest reason to become a cop in America, and most places, but in America, is because you're a fucking psychopath who wants to be given a gun by the state and licensed to kill people. The biggest reason to join the American military is because you're poor and want a free education and healthcare and to travel, maybe learn some languages, meet some people. The American military is bigger and stronger, but it's also workers. Like like impoverished workers like overwhelmingly, and it's difficult to gauge their like where they are at ideologically, but it's kind of like it's massively make or break for like what goes down in America. I think with America's declining power, the possibility of them invading even Greenland, let alone Canada or whatever, it's just not real.
Yeah.
But the military intervening if there was civil conflict is like the biggest question of whether like America maintains domestic fascism, I think. Because if the military splits, it's civil war.
Okay, I have two things that I want to say about this. Number one, the USA idea to like basically invade Canada is a Michael Moore film. It's called Canadian Bacon, and it stars John Candy. And it's really bad, and I really didn't like it. that's probably why Michael Moore went into documentaries instead.
Wow, so that was like what he was doing for. Yeah, I never knew that. I always just thought of him as a documentarian. I didn't know that.
He tried to make this really bad. Like, obviously, you know, it's completely politically motivated, and it is like funny, hilariously. Obviously, John Candy is Canadian, and he plays an American who lives in like upstate New York, and he's like, "Oh, we're not about to let these fucking hosers take over our land and stuff like that." Like, it's so silly, like, and it's just like a really like some of it's funny, but it's one of those movies where you're like, oh my god, this is such a hard watch. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say. So it is just incredibly funny that like this parody just simply doesn't exist anymore. Second thing that I wanted to say is that Sophie sent me a video of a squaddy guy. I don't know if you call them squaddies down there, Tim, but squaddies are like just military people who are not working at the moment. They're not on base or whatever, they're on. You know what I mean? Like they're back in civilian areas and stuff like that. And he's just like in his car and he's going to fucking like IHOP or some shit, and he's just there like, so like a lot of us at the base, like when we were there, were just like, why don't we have aircon? And why is everything falling apart? And why are all the beds moldy? And why have I got this rash? And we keep asking like, when are we going to get money to fix all this stuff? And it just like doesn't happen, and this, that, and the other. And someone had sort of like prefaced this video, I think it was like a quote tweet or something, by referencing something called the USS Potemkin, which is a thing in the revolution in Russia as well. Sophie was telling me there were two revolutions. There was a failed revolution in 1907, which I think was started by the USS Potemkin. The USS Potemkin. I believe what happened was all the soldiers on that ship were not the USS Potemkin. What am I talking about? Because it's not the fucking United States. It's Russia. Whatever. The Potemkin was a ship. It was a Tsarist ship. Everyone got served moldy meat or something to that effect. Right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
This. Yeah. We've got
Battleship Potemkin. That's what it is.
Middle Earth Marxist in the chat is saying Battleship Potemkin. Yeah,
that's the one. So they got fed maggoty bread or maggoty meat or something like that, and they went mental and they were like, "Fuck this," And Sophie raises like a great point about people in military service. They may be like some of them may be jarhead reactionaries, but like a lot of them are literally just like workers, and they will have shit conditions. And particularly if the US is trying to skimp on save costs and stuff like that, especially if it's being headed by someone like Elon and Trump, who like might not quite understand the necessity of like funding logistical elements of the US military in order to make sure it's like completely
even just like legitimate like health and like health and safety stuff, veterans affairs, anything like that. Like, there's so many different angles that you could come from, that it's like these are kind of like like conditions that even some dude that is fully just like Yankee pilled and he fucking loves America, and like if he starts, if they stop stocking the kind of axle grease that he needs to keep his favorite fighter jet wife flying, then he's like then you're gonna see pushback from there. But yeah, you know, like I think maybe they have underestimated the pushback from some of these places that I feel like they're going to receive. But yeah, like I even see, you know, like kind of normal traditional conservatives already getting kind of shitty about being like, oh, yeah, you know, like obviously like veterans affairs and things like that, where it's like, obviously conservatives have historically always been shit to veterans, but like that's part of the brand, right? You know, that they're like, you know, they always say talking about like our veterans, blah blah blah, like this. So to see someone who like, especially in the past when you see like Republicans that have shit on veterans, it'll be like, oh, but this guy's got military service, this guy, whatever, like that. Like Elon Musk is not that guy. You know, like when we see people like that, I think like, you know, Elon Musk and Trump, who's like not a known draft dodger and shit like that. I think that there's going to be a little bit more of a conversation that is had around that.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess like, you know, if we're thinking more broadly about, yeah, just the way in which, you know, society is simply not gonna accept these, you know, things being turned off, these, you know, funding things being turned off. You know, there are all kinds of bizarre, I guess, situations whereby people become enmeshed with other people in various different scenarios. What I'm talking about mainly is like US aid, in sort of like, you know, operating hospitals in various different countries, for example. Like one of the stories that I saw, I think it was this week, was from Democracy Now! Talking about how the first deaths from US aid cuts were being seen, and it was this one 70-year-old. I can't remember. I think it was Myanmar, and she needed a ventilator, because this USAID stuff got, you know, basically pulled out. It just meant that she like she just couldn't get treatment. She couldn't reach like the other hospital that had the ventilator that she needed, and so she unfortunately passed away. And you know, that might sound like a, you know, just one person's life, but we don't know what kind of connection that person has to, you know, the doctors that were there. We don't know the kind of connection that the doctors have to the people that they're treating. You know, we don't know, like this is the thing. It's like these things are going to have like such like extremely powerful ramifications. I think like it's pretty much underestimated, but I think that it all pretty much solidly lines up with I can't remember if I was talking about, we've done so many bonus episodes recently, I can't remember if I was talking about this on a bonus episode or a live episode, but Arnaud Bertrand, who is this economist who pals around with Yanis Varoufakis, saying that you know, Trump basically pulling all this funding and Elon pulling all this funding out of all like the US aid stuff and all foreign interest stuff is basically its managed decline. And it's like Soph said, you know, like we all agree, it's looting the empire before it falls, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it just makes sense. Like
managed decline is a good way of actually describing it, really.
Yeah. Yeah, because you know, if you're a business like Trump, for all the things around him, you know, people can be there and they'll be like, "Oh, he's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's a silly Billy. He's a Cheeto in the White House." But like, actually, he is a businessman, and businessmen know like when a company's on the rocks, and it's, you know, we have to look at, in capitalism, we have to look at countries as companies because that's how they operate a lot of the time, you know, especially for the people that are running them. And you know, when it comes to managing like businesses, Trump's pretty fucking good. That's how he got to where he is. You know, not that managing businesses is a, you know, morally good thing to do, but he's adept at it. And yeah, managing the decline of the empire seems pretty fitting for someone like Donald Trump. And it's actually like, I don't know. It is really like apt for Donald Trump, because I don't know if anyone knows this, but Trump has been like, you know, not only has he been in movies, but he's also been like parodied in like many movies before he was even like politically active. Like famously, Gremlins. Basically, Gremlins 2 parodied Trump with this guy called Clamp. He's like the main CEO guy, who's like, he runs this big building where it's like a television network or something. and you know, he's like your stereotypical like all-American neoliberal yuppie capitalist parasite. You know, it's just this kind of a guy, and that is exactly what like this society has led to. It's the penultimate like end of the empire guy to have at the end of your empire, I guess. Yeah. I don't. Sorry, did you have something to come in with then? Or?
Oh no. I was gonna say, yeah. Yeah. It is interesting that it's like this. Yeah, like managed decline is such a good way of framing it. And I was just thinking about that in relation to what is happening down here as well. When that's very much what it is. It's like this very managed kind of transfer of wealth and power from public to private enterprises. And you know, it is like, it's not, I mean, in America is more of like a free fall, really. You know, it's like it's a very fast process, whereas over here it's happening a little bit slower, but it's absolutely the same kind of like turbocharged neoliberal like gutting of all the systems and everything like that. And you know, and it's like what we've seen with what's his name, Malay, and you know, like these other kind of like neoliberal freaks or whatever. But even with Malay, we've seen the results of what he's doing, and it's fucking dark. Like it's fucking terrible. And you know, and that's like a small glimpse into what's happening. But yeah, I'm thinking like with like at what point, like with the way that it's happening in America, when there's a point where people go like this is enough or whatever, or when like the unions stand up and fight back or whatever, is there like is it going to be this liberal thing where they just go like, okay, we're just gonna go back to the cached version of these systems that we had from a year ago, and we're just gonna carry on from there? Or is that a time where people go like, actually no, we're gonna, you know, like we need radical reform in a lot of these places? I wonder what the outcome of that is going to be, because it is wild to see that, you know, like we were talking about this like destruction of American soft power. These are like agencies and plans that took, you know, like years, even decades to put in place, setting up all these things. You know, like some of these people losing their jobs, probably like this was their life goal. You know, they would have gone to university studying all these different things to get into these jobs just to be like pulled out. And it's kind of like firstly, lol, lamau, but secondly, like, what happens after that? You know, like, do they rebuild these structures in some way? Do they, because they're probably, you know, like they don't have the long game anymore, that they've had to build these things up to this point, you know? So
I think we have to try and reframe the way in which we see America, because like a lot of the times when we think about the USA, we think, oh, there's so much money and power there, but like the money has only ever been in the hand of the politicians and the capitalists who run the companies, right? And so when it comes to like the people, I guess it does truly depend on whether, like, you know, people do, like you say, whether people do organize and, you know, come to an actual understanding that, like, oh, actually, this is a chance of liberation. This is a chance at having like a new life, I guess. But I guess like what the way that I'm sort of thinking is that like the US already has like this massive, you know, economic disparity. Like it's huge, like the wealth inequality in America, in terms of like, you know, if you sort of like spread it, if you take a look at like the areas where wealth is concentrated, you know, versus the areas that are not, it's like overwhelmingly, you know, people are extremely poor, and you know, I think that it's that, you know, you've got a country of about 500 million people. Only perhaps, you know, I don't know, maybe not even 50 million, like 50 million maybe of that amount of people are like having an okay life based on how much money that they have, and then even less than that are, you know, doing well, like what could be considered doing well for yourself, basically having like all your basic needs catered to, kind of thing. And I guess that like with that in mind, you know, the US comparatively can like not really be too much different in its most poverty stricken areas than like, you know, any other country in the imperial periphery, which is like it's probably like quite surprising to sort of like think of it like that if you're like, I don't know, I
Yeah.
guess like used to the idea that like America's the richest country in the world or whatever. But it's because that wealth is concentrated in the hands of the few
Yeah.
that, you know, enables this like huge disparity. So I think that like with Trump and Elon trying to have this managed decline where like, okay, we're not spending any money on anything outside of America anymore. You know, we're keeping all the dough for ourselves. It is just for themselves. And whatever happens with Trump and Elon, whether they end up, I don't know, whether another Mangione shows up and shoots Elon or some shit, I don't know, or whether they just like, I don't know, fly to Mars together or whatever happens, that the US will remain this, you know, state that just like is full of like millions of people with fucking nothing. And it will be more like a state on its own rather than the head of this massive empire.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, like already, like it's already the case that like the UK has nowhere to go in terms of like you know, seeking out trade deals post Brexit, because it's like, oh shit, we were hoping to get a really good trade deal from the US, but Trump's fucked that with all these tariffs. So
Yeah.
what do we do? Do we go to China? Like, what's the crack? Like, it's been like a bizarre. You know, I think me and you spoke about this a little bit when we did our bonus episode, Tim. You know, just like the sort of like bizarre sort of week where the UK just did not know who to beg for money.
Yeah.
And it's not just the UK, it's Canada as well. It's all these different empire vassals, as it were. Like I'm sure you know, the government in Aotearoa is the same, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like just having like this nightmare. I don't know if you've seen anything like that in the news down there. Like, what do we do about Trump's tariffs? Or
Yeah, it is interesting because so the funny thing is our government is like, you know, like they always refer to America as like our best friend, our best ally, our, you know, all this kind of stuff like that. And so there was like a lot of talk about like, you know, like how like, and especially with the you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in the moment about America fear mongering about China and China's presence in the Pacific, and like being like, you know, we need to like kind of side with America in the Pacific so that China doesn't get like a, you know, a foothold and all this kind of bullshit stuff. Whereas like China is making agreements, like just made one with the Cook Islands recently that was like just super chill and really beneficial to the Cook Islands. But it takes away from American and also New Zealand power in the area, because it takes away their dependence on us and on America. So yeah, so we have all this stuff going, like, you know, they're saying, you know, oh, we rely on America so much, they're our best friends, we work together with them and all this kind of stuff. But then you look at it on paper and it's just not true whatsoever. Like, you know, like China is our biggest trading partner. China is the one that, you know, is actually doing good things in the Pacific, that we should just be like, oh yeah, we should actually, you know, have a better relationship with them. We've even had like Chinese trade officials commenting on it, with our prime minister like made this statement about he made some shitty statement about China, and this trade official was just like literally just like kind of doing the whole like, I don't think about you at all sort of thing. Like, it's just like, we're this like tiny little nation, and like our imports and exports rely so much on places like China and so little on America. But because of cultural hegemony, we're bending over backwards all the time to do dumb shit for them. Or like, you know, like we've sent our fucking SAS soldiers over to like kill children in Afghanistan for them. For what? You know, like, it's, yeah. So like China are the ones that really are our closest ally and have kind of added more stability to the Pacific than America or France with their fucking, you know, nuclear testing and all that kind of shit. So it's just like this weird thing where it's like, because of American cultural hegemony and all that kind of stuff, like we're taught to think that, you know, like we need to be kind of we need to be doing all this stuff for them or whatever, when really we don't. Like it wouldn't affect us too much at all, really. It would.
Yeah.
The people that would really affect would be like the American billionaires that like get New Zealand citizenship to hide money in the Cook Islands, like people like that, from the Panama Papers and stuff like that. For the average person, it's just like, this is nothing. Like this doesn't
Yeah.
really affect us too much at all.
Yeah, it kind of like strengthens my idea that like in the Imperial core, it's not really like there will be particularly strong revolutions. There's something that you said, Soph, that was like it's always been on my mind, especially when people are getting frustrated with like organizing efforts in the UK or organizing efforts in the US, where it's like, oh my God, we'll never do a revolution if we keep doing this, etc., etc. And it's like, well, actually, I think that like our purpose really is to cause rot in the Imperial core. Like that's the thing that's always like really stuck with me, because it's like if we
Yeah.
if we are just like a present disease, as it were, that the immune system of the body of the Imperial core is desperately trying to like fight to placate, it's a sick organ, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that is like what we can hope to achieve. That may be the best that we can hope to achieve, but like, it's kind of like what you're saying, Tim, in Aotearoa's relationship with China, and also like the fact that the UK is now thinking about trying to cozy up to China. It's like we're just gonna get liberated by Dengism, man. Like that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
Like,
I know,
I
it's
think
been
like
heartbreaking to me. Like it's honestly, no, I'm really serious about this. It's fucked me up, like seeing Dengism win. Like I've been calling Dengism like I've been calling Deng Xiaoping a spineless worm for like years,
yeah, yeah,
and I'm just like, oh fuck, like he might have been right though. Like
yeah,
actually,
yeah.
maybe he was just like, yeah, we can play their game better than
Like
they
we can
can, so we'll just
compromise. Yeah,
do it, and then we'll win, and then once we've won, we can do the thing, and it's just like
yeah,
shit. Like, dude, he did it.
yeah.
But whether China will actually then implement any communism
Yeah.
anywhere, that's still an open question. So,
The
like in that
follow
yeah,
through
sense,
it's to be
Deng has not
seen.
necessarily. But yes, I think that thing about rot is just like this is why we love the analogy of the mushroom so much, right? Because
Mm.
to say like it's a body and we're the virus, it doesn't make us, like feel like we're working towards something that we're going to win and it's going to be good, right? But
Yeah.
but in a mycelium, like an invasive fungus can take over and eat and replace every little node of the mycelium, right? And then
Yeah.
it's like the same thing. It's like ship of Theseus, like the same thing has now become a different species, a different
Mm.
organism that works in a different way and does different things. But it wasn't that like the previous thing, yes, was bad from the perspective of the well, like sorry, the new thing was bad from the perspective of the previous thing, but now it's become something new, and that's
Yeah.
really the way revolution works. And like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there's this other invasive species that's trying to also take over the existing, body, but like we're gonna
Yeah.
win. So that's it.
In regards to, like the idea of like, like what Mule was just talking about, there's like something that I heard someone say once was that like the revolution is not going to begin in the imperial core, but for leftists in the imperial core, their job is to greet it when it comes. So it's like this thing of like it's going to happen out there, but there's going to be a point where, when it's kind of like the time to stand up from the inside the
Yes.
house and be like, okay, cool, you know we can
Yeah, I
and
completely
it's
agree with
like
this. Yeah,
organizing towards that point. I
yeah,
think is like a really interesting way of looking at it, and then also to be like looking at things, developments outside of the imperial core, and be like, oh, this is, like this here is a revolutionary moment, like in being
yeah.
educated on that, and yeah, getting ready
Like
for it
I
to come.
I don't know, like people, it sounds very like lib to be like I'm worried about Russia. I'm not particularly worried about Russia, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like they are another thing that's like growing in the imperial periphery, or like has all this
Mm.
power, and it's not inside of the American imperialist project. And yeah, them getting more power in the world is scary because they're bigots, because they're
Yeah.
fascists. Like they have camps for gay people. Like that is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
fucking scary. I don't know. I think that like
I do
I get
feel
really
like sometimes
frustrated.
their power is overstated sometimes. I
Yes, I'm
do
not
think
that worried
like,
about them. That's what
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
saying.
It's
Like
like they have like an entire GDP that's like smaller than like Texas or whatever. So it's
I
like,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and and
But they're
that's
definitely
why
a
they
thing.
play
Yeah.
dirty as well. Like that's
Yeah.
why they have like counterintelligence, blackmail plots, and all this shit, and like why they do like I don't know, if you look at like Russian military development in the last few decades, one of the biggest things is the Gerasimov doctrine, which
Yeah.
has to do with like spreading misinformation among the enemy
Oh,
and
yeah,
confusing their informational ecosystem
Mm.
to cause chaos. And even that like only works for a little while before people just start being like, yeah, I think someone's like putting all this fake bullshit around. Like we've
Yeah.
experienced this. Like we've literally
Yeah.
experienced this in the culture war, where for a few years people are falling for like obvious like
Yeah.
turf bait. And then like
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
after a little while, like people are monkeys with the capacity for like apophenia and depression. That's like the two things that we call sentience put together, right? Like is just pattern recognition and our capacity to write like Norwegian novels about having
Mm.
a dad who killed himself. Like those are the two like defining aspects of humanity. We spot patterns. And so like if a whole bunch of people keep on going like, but what about trans women in sports? Like, and you've just been through that discourse a few times, you're just like, there's nothing productive here. And it just seems like this
Yeah.
person is actually an aggressor who is trying to like
Mm.
spread something bad. And I'm just going to not listen to that person
Yeah.
from now on in any of those conversations. But yeah, sorry, that's all Russia. Like, I'm not that worried about it. It's just, it is a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I guess I'm really frustrated by like imperial core leftists, and they really are leftists, like socialists. Like, I'm not saying liberals here, but like fear of China among people who are properly like are organizing, and still they're like, China will come in and do all this awful shit to us. And I'm just like, that's not, that is not being ready to greet the revolution when it comes. Like,
Yeah.
as you put it, like you need to just, yeah, you need to like secede out of the imperialist machine and like not be a part of it and be self-sustaining and like aid its collapse, watch its collapse, take care of the people around you, any mix of those things. But then like the point of having that that sovereignty, right? The point of
Mm.
gaining your own autonomy is that you are then able to like negotiate with like another incoming like body that like wants to dictate over you in some way. Like because
Yeah.
yeah, China is a massive world power and just will have an ability to economically dominate and dictate over people over like other countries. Like this is why there's so much fear mongering around like the Belt and Road Initiative, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like for people who don't know, China is building a bunch of like serious infrastructure in neighboring countries, but like all roads lead to China, obviously, right? Because why else would they do it? Like it's economically like profitable for them,
Mm.
but like it does make them the more powerful trading partner to all these countries who like otherwise just wouldn't have those roads for shipping stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's soft power. It's exactly the same thing we were talking about with America. So it is power still, right? And it's just like, yeah, you do on the one hand, you do have to worry when you are the less powerful party in a negotiation of interests. On the other hand, China is not America, and being so afraid of it, like knee-jerk afraid of it,
Yeah.
is giving way to a lot of reactionary ideas and is not necessarily productive. And I think we can walk and chew gum. Like I think we can have both of these things at once.
Mm.
I think that like, you know, it's pretty like, I don't know, man. I'm jumping in here because I've just seen this thing on Blue Sky that is like an email to a Democrat like past donator, you know, one of these emails that comes out, and it's from U.S. Senator Cory Booker, I think, that's talking about like, don't worry about fascism because it's really hard and it's really shit, but don't worry, we'll come out from under a rock soon. It's basically using the analogy of like a lobster shedding its like shell, basically. And it's saying that like, oh, you know, lobsters have to grow and go through this really painful process like every 4 years or something. Do you know what I mean? It's so ridiculous. Sorry, I don't have anything productive to add to the discussion. I just thought that was funny. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Great.
But yeah, I mean, I think what else is there to discuss? Like America's power is collapsing.
I think to round it up,
okay.
there's not going to be there is no mouth, so I must scream. There's not going to be I have no mouth, so I must scream. It's not going to happen. That just isn't going to happen.
That's just ridiculous.
It's so
scary
far away from reality.
to see their whole plan I need to like be really clear about this for people like Kira who've seen this video and found it really scary, or people who've seen like that wisecrack thing you were talking about and found it really scary. The way these people think, right? You have to understand something epistemological here, right? Something to do with how we know things. Different people have different frameworks of understanding the world. Some people just believe in care, right? And the thing driving them most of all is creating structures to take care of other people. And contradictions in how like systems work like present problems to that, but they don't really like it's not like it doesn't require for it all to be like ironed out and perfect, set into a ruled grid, right? It matters that people are taken care of, and that's all that matters. There are other people who think that like throwing other people under the bus will extend their life, right? They are in a death cult because they believe in like sacrifice for immortality, and like the whole of reaction and fascism like grows out of this human impulse, right? There are some people who believe in this ruled grid, right? Like this, just like setting down a perfect rubric that creates a complete understanding of everything. And there are some people who want to get out of that thing that I just described. Like there are people whose main impulse is this like almost paranoid one, but not necessarily bad, right? Because that can like anxiety can be a self-preserving response. Like they want to get out of that machine, right? And so like the four, as I see it, these four tendencies is like care and death and machine and escape. And these people are machine thinkers. They just want everything to fit neatly together. So when they describe a plan that works completely, that's because that's how they think the world works. But you have to stop and breathe and ask yourself, is the world a machine? Is the world a thing that fits neatly together and has these toothed cogs that just never need greasing? And the answer is obviously no. The real world is messy and fucking confusing, and all sorts of contradictory shit happens all the time. And so no plan like that will ever work.
Yep. That's it. I think that's a good way to tie it up. You know, we've not hit the full 3 hours, but we don't have a guest.
No, I'm happy with it.
Yeah,
I gave my speech. I'm going to bed. Bye.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. We're not going to do questions because we don't need to answer questions because we're the hosts.
You're all so well informed that
you all know this shit.
You don't have any questions.
Exactly. Everyone knows exactly what's going on, exactly all the things that we just said, even the bizarre, meaningless things that I said. So that's great. Soph, where can we find more of your stuff?
Thank you for asking. I am Sophie from Mars, and all of my stuff is available at Sophie from Mars on the different platforms. I'm no longer on Twitter, fuck Twitter, but I am on Tumblr and Blue Sky and Instagram. If you want to support me, you should check out linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars. I am a YouTuber. That's my main job and how I pay my rent and get my medication. If you check out my Patreon, I've got two big upcoming projects I want to talk about for a second. So one is that I am doing a video about the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson, which is my favorite fiction series. I'm just really excited about it. I get to just geek out about it for ages. The story is about like Mars colonization and terraforming, but what if they had a revolution and then it was like communism, and then like that's the end of like the basically like that gets sorted very early, and then like they get to focus on solving like life's bigger problems than capitalism, and it's really fucking cool. And I've been making a bunch of visuals for it in Kerbal Space Program, if people know that game, and I'm going to do some like filming at the Science Museum, and I'm getting a telescope, and I'm going to do astral photography. So like it's popping off with that one, and I'm really excited about it, and I hope people like it. And I'm also nearing completion of my big project, Mad and the Mentally Ill, which is about my theory of madness and sanity and mental well-being and how it can be applied to organizing. So if you want to see those projects early in their text or video forms, patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. If you want to see a video about half an hour where I explain how I made the visuals in Kerbal Space Program, if you're any Kerbal Space Program heads out there, that's currently up on my Patreon right now. So linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars is how you can support me. Yeah, either by Patreon or just sending me money directly. Tim, where can people find more Tim?
So you can find me on Twitch and YouTube as Conquest of Dread, or you can find me over on Blue Sky or Twitter, or aka X, as Dread Conquest. Um, yeah, mainly shit posting over there. But if you are into tabletop RPGs, you should look up my project called Dark RPG. It's on Twitter as Dark RPG 2000. It's very like a dark dystopian anti-capitalist kind of future stuff. If you're into like stuff like cyberpunk and Shadowrun and stuff, but from like a very kind of working class versus like CEOs kind of angle, then please check that out. It's very close. I've got some printed copies of it that are like the the I guess like the beta testing copies or whatever, but the goal is to actually get it printed and everything, like hopefully within the next couple months or so. Just some last little testing stuff going through. It's all fully illustrated and stuff as well. It's like 200 pages. Every page has like at least one illustration on it. It's just like this is behemoth of work. So check that out if you're keen. But what about Donald Mule? Where can we find out more about our favorite DJ?
Yes, thank you, Tim. It's linktree.ee/DJ MUEL. I am working on a video about British fascism at the moment and what we can do about it, which is going to be pretty similar to the video that I made about Elon Musk doing a Nazi salute and what we could do about that, what you could do about that if you're in America. Pretty similar themes going on the go here. Yeah, check that out over on YouTube. Also, what else do I got? Patreon's on there as well. You could get me. You could give me some money on Patreon. You could also give me money on PayPal via the link tree. I don't really have any Patreon content because I'm in between jobs at the moment. I'm desperately trying to apply for organizer jobs. Oh boy, they have like a whole extra bit of applying for jobs that you just don't need to do in other jobs. Oh man, they got application forms that are massive. Oh Jesus. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of work. I was streaming like a little bit, but I've kind of like given up on that for the time being while I'm trying to find this job and get on universal credit. But finally, don't forget to send some money over to crowdfunder. I can't remember what the name of it is. It's basically Julia's crowdfunder. She's one of the Filton 18. Go to PalAction. Go to palaction.org and make sure that you check out the prisoner support information. You can send a prisoner a letter. You can donate. Do that for me. That's not me, but if you do that for me, I'll be dead happy with you. And also, don't forget that Red Planet is a show. You should become one of our patrons as well. It's patreon.com/red. Patreon.com/red_planet. Become a patron today. And at the end of every show, we say thank you to our highest tier of supporters, our sickos. And that looks like this. Thank you so much to Risky Inverse. Thank you very much for supporting. Bye now.
Fab. See you next week. Bye.
It was on the dock earlier.
It'll be easy to edit. Don't worry. It's fine.
I'm so sorry.
Fine. It'll be fine.
I got really excited. I thought we had him back.
We got to send him an invoice. Right. JBP, you owe us now.
Oh, did you want me to redo that bit about
That's a good idea.
No probs.
The note was the land is being purchased at market rates. Yeah.
Yeah.
The buybacks. Yeah.
So it should be pretty easy to just redo. I'm gonna try and sort of remember the sort of animated way that I was talking about it. So also I had my glasses on. So here we go. This is it. Got to do it professionally. Yeah.
Oh.
All right.